don't know what's happening.
How do I deal with this moral dilemma of liking someone who kills people? That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like,
Clearly,
okay, well,
he's never read a dark
you've
romance
also
book.
killed people. But
Hey, everybody, this is Kat.
And this is Rachel.
And you're listening to the Smut Peddlers podcast, a show for people who love books, especially when there's smut. We discuss our likes, our dislikes, and share all our favorite moments with you.
Today, we're talking about Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. So grab your favorite beverage and get ready to burn with us.
So today's book, similar trigger warnings to Throne of Glass. We have a blood and gore, trauma and nightmares, torture, murder, attempted murder, grief and loss depiction, death of importance to character, suicidal ideation. It is very similar to book one. If you were here through book one, I wouldn't say that it gets any worse than book one, but kind of on par with most fantasy in general. There is also injury to animal, which is heart-wrenching. So keep that in mind.
Fleetfoot's fine, everybody. It's okay.
No animal dies. But
no death.
There is
no animal
injury.
Death.
Which,
but
of
there
course,
is injury.
As an animal lover,
Fleetfoot is a
definitely
brave lady.
Cried.
Yeah.
Tears worship.
You can't help it. All right. So we're on book 2, baby. Celaena Sardothien has won a brutal contest to become the king's champion, but she is far from loyal to the crown. Though she goes to great lengths to hide her secret, her deadly charade becomes more difficult when she realizes she is not the only one seeking justice. Her search for answers ensnares those closest to her, and no one is safe from the suspicion. Not the Crown Prince Dorian, not Chaol, the captain of the guard, not even her best friend Nehemia, a princess with a rebel heart. Then, one terrible night, the secrets they have all been keeping lead to an unspeakable tragedy. As Celaena's world shatters, she will be forced to decide once and for all, where her true loyalties lie and what she's willing to fight for. So we rated exactly the same this time. 5 stars, 1 pepper. This
5 stars,
closed
1
door.
Pepper.
Closed door, but there is actual romance in it. So there is a clear kind of romance storyline. People are falling for each other. Things are happening, but there's no explicit detail. They only kind of talk about it kind of as it leads up to it, and then the next day kind of stuff. So it is still young adult. At least I would still consider it young adult up until this point.
Upper teen.
Yes. Upper teen. Again, just like I had mentioned in the last one, it does get spicier. So if you are listening to this thinking, I'll recommend it to my kids, just be wary that unless your kids are turning 16 and plan on trying to read all of these books, it's going to get spicier, I promise.
Yes. And 1 pepper, for us, I would say I leaned more towards the 1 pepper, and the reason for it being that it doesn't explicitly go into detail of two characters sleeping together, but it does the sort of fade to black, and then it comes to and they're still in bed together, and they describe each other's bodies in a way. It's not very explicit detail of it, but that is kind of why we leaned more towards a 1 instead of a 0, which would typically be your closed door. Just fade to black, you know what's going to happen. Yeah, I just figured that was it just tipped the line from 0 to 1. It's not really in your face.
Yeah, to me it's a very clear 1. 0 to me is there's nothing. If it's not got any sort of romance in it, or someone kisses and nothing past that is happening, then I'm probably just gonna give it a 0. 1 for me is absolutely that's a closed door, fade to black. Stuff happens, but you're not gonna see any of it.
Yeah. Cool. So going into kind of the characters, we have a lot of the same characters that play from book 1 into book 2. Celaena, obviously, female main character. Chaol is still a very prominent role in book 2. Dorian, still a very prominent role. We have Nehemia, her best friend, still very in the forefront of this book. We get bits and pieces of Parrington. We get bits and pieces of Caltaine throughout. The king is obviously, she's the king's champion. And so the whole first part of the book is she is acting as the king's champion. The whole thing she is, but it's really where you get kind of knowledge of what she's doing on behalf of the king. The queen doesn't really show up too much. I don't even think I remember her. She may have she was in a little bit during the like fair.
She shows up for like the carnival, yeah.
Yeah, she's there for the
but
carnival.
But she's not really.
Yeah, and the carnival is being held for Holland, the younger brother, but that's because he's back on holiday or something. And so that's really how they play a role in this book. They're not really there too often. Elena is still a pretty big influence. And we get a little bit more of Gavin in this one, which I liked. There was kind of a little peek of him in this book, which I enjoyed, where he came to fruition for a main character in the book. We have some newer characters. I listed 5 new characters for this book that felt very important when I came across them. So we have Brannon, and he is the king. He is the first king of Terrasen. And as we know from book 1, Terrasen is where Celaena is from. We have Mort, who is my favorite character. And he is a door knocker that talks. And he is fantastic. And he has so many good lines in the book. I think most of my favorite lines from the book is him interacting with Celaena. It's fantastic. We have Roland Havillard. I'm say this name wrong every single time. He is Dorian's cousin. He becomes kind of a bigger character in this book. I think he may have been mentioned in passing in book 1, if I remember, but I'm not. It may have just been, I think it was more of like, I think in book 1, they talk about his cousin. Dorian and Chaol talk about his cousin, and then Chaol mentions that he like punched him in the face and like knocked him out.
Yeah.
But there's like really nothing about Roland before that, so I didn't really think
it wasn't substantial enough for either of us to remember it from the first book. He was brought up in book 2, and it kind of like went back to that, and I did the whole like, wait a minute, why do I know that name but like don't really know the name? So he comes into the picture and he starts to become more of a character. He's built up a bit more in this book. He's Dorian's cousin, as I said. There's also, he gets an onyx ring, which if you remember from book 1, the king has and Duke Parrington has. And so he also gets one. So that plays, we have a little theory from book 1 coming into book 2 where the ring is now playing the part on another person, another character. We get Baba Yellowlegs. She is an iron teeth witch. She came with the carnival, so part of Holland's birthday, or not birthday, it's his like, you're home, and his mom like adores him more than Dorian. They're like, we need to have a carnival in his honor. So she comes with the carnival. So she's one of like the carnies, as you would refer to them, I guess. Or at least their terms. That's a term that I've heard previously. The witches in this book, so the Iron Teeth witches, they know not necessarily prophecies, but they have a lot of like intel on people. They're a very old clan.
Yeah.
And Baba Yellowlegs specifically is very old. She's like I think she's considered the last witch queen or something like that.
She's the former matron of the Yellowlegs clan and claims to be the last born in the Witch Kingdom.
Yeah, so she is like
hundreds of years old.
Also like one of the people who like holds most, like a lot of their history and stuff. Like she's extremely knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And she has a lot of lore, and because she's a witch, she has a lot of lore that she brings to the book in terms of like magic. So she comes up multiple times throughout the book with just lore drops, and they're
Yeah.
thick.
Yeah.
And she is just dropping knowledge left and right, and it is great.
So like Rachel said, magic plays a big part in this book, and it's really sprinkled in a way that you're just getting a taste of it. You get little bits and pieces of characters interacting with magic. So we have another character, Archer Finn. He is a character that Celaena has known for most of her life, for a very large chunk of her life. When she, as a child, she was taken in from book 1. She was taken in by Arabin and trained within the Assassin's Guild. Archer was also trained in the Assassin's Guild, but he trained under, oh gosh, I don't even remember her name. It starts with a C. But he trained under another character. And unfortunately,
he trains as like a courtesan.
Yeah, so he trained as an assassin, but she took him as a courtesan. So pretty much a male sex worker in these times.
And he's older than her.
Yes.
And like the last time that they see each other before all of this comes back up, she's like 13.
Mm-hmm.
So
and he's 16, I think. So it's like he's older, but not by too much. So he was kind of going through it a little bit before her. So like they kind of went through similar things in their teenage years.
Yeah. But she like has like some mixed feelings about it, because he was one of the people that like Sam, who is her like first love basically, that she like flirted with when she was like coming of age basically, and was like, oh, there's this guy and he's like meant to be like this, training to be like a courtesan or whatever, and they just kind of have like a flirty relationship.
Yeah.
And then when she sees him again, like he's shocked because he knew that she ended up in Dovir.
Mm-hmm.
But he plays like a very big role throughout this whole book, and it's like such a huge driving plot point character. His character development is really interesting throughout this whole book. So those are the ones that you had listed. I had one more, which is we actually meet Chaol's dad. This book. So Chaol's dad is like the other one that I wanted to mention. Can't remember what his name is. It's fine. He's not a great guy.
Aranale, or he's Duke of
Aranale. Lord of Aniel, or something. I don't know. Lord. He's a dick. It's fine. So he basically just comes to visit during this book, and they kind of have words towards the end of the book.
Yeah, so a big part of him coming, he has always wanted, and you get a bit of this from book 1, he's always wanted Chaol to take over his like reign, like be the next in line. And you learn in the first book a little of Chaol lore, is that he gave up his title to go be the captain of the guard. And so
Dad didn't like that.
Dad's not a fan.
Not a fan.
Dad
thinks it's a complete waste of time.
Hates his brother. Like, just like you get.
Yeah, I never really understand what his deal is with like not wanting the brother.
Like, he calls his other son like pretty much scrawny and takes after your mother. Like, definitely not strong. Whatever. Doesn't have strong will. Just like kind of says like he sucks. Even though we don't know anything about him, and that's Taryn Westfall is Chaol's brother. So like we get really no information except for that he's like built like your mother and wants to read.
Which like what does that even
like
mean?
A strong
but
hand.
Sure.
I have a feeling Taryn's gonna be like a good guy in the future. I don't know. Obviously we have no background information of the younger brother, except for he's like your mother, and I don't like Chaol's dad, so the fact that Chaol's dad doesn't like his younger brother, I think his younger brother's gonna be a good guy, like, in the end.
It's good. It's a good sign when the person you don't like doesn't like him. Like, well, I didn't like you anyways, so.
Yeah. So.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's pretty much all of the characters that are coming back, and the new characters that we start to see in this one. But other than that, we can jump into the book itself, the plot.
Yeah. So
Um,
this book is broken up into 2 parts, which is a new thing in the series now. So Throne of Glass was just 1 book. There was no sections in it. It was just chapters. This book is broken up into 2 parts. We have part 1, which is the King's Champion, and then part 2, it's the Queen's Arrow. So part 1 is chapters 1 through 29, and then the second part is chapters 30 and on, so 30 to 56. In the very beginning, the first few scenes that you get that play out, you don't get any of the characters really interacting with each other. So in book 1, Celaena, Chaol, Dorian, and Nehemia are like best friends almost. Like the 4 of them interact with each other a lot. Obviously, Dorian was a love interest. Chaol was kind of a love interest in book 1. Nehemia is Celaena's best friend. And so book 1, you get the background of how they're all feeling about Celaena being sent on these champion missions from the king. So the end of book 1, she signs her contract. The beginning of book 1 is she has been
enacting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She is kind of going through that. So as we kind of suspected, her contract is to kill people who have ill will towards the king. They're rebels. They're just pretty much, he just gives her a name and says, this is your job now. Go take care of them. And
I like the way that she sets it up. I like the way that she sets it up because it is very much like you know what Celaena's background is when you come out of the first book. She's an assassin, but we like her. She's got a moral compass. And then you jump into the beginning of this first book and it's like, all right, she's out there killing people for the king, who we all hate. And you're like, really? Is she actually?
Yeah,
okay.
So like you get some of Chaol's background verbiage is like he's kind of at odds as well because he, as we know from book 1, is very morally sound. And he's like, but I like her, but she's murdering people, but it's because the king is sending her to do it and she doesn't really have a choice, but it's still murdering people. And are these people, well, these people are posing a threat to the king and Otterlin, so it's okay. So he just kind of goes back and forth, I think, throughout the first few chapters. Really,
he just has a problem that she's the one doing it.
Yeah, because he has such good, like, has strong feelings towards her. So he's like really at this, like, I don't know what's happening.
How do I deal with this moral dilemma of liking someone who kills people? That's crazy.
Yeah,
it's like,
clearly he's never read a dark romance.
You've also killed people, but oh well, that's a different genre altogether. Yeah, so he and Nehemia is kind of having the same thoughts. Like basically everyone, and Dorian too, is like the way that the whole book starts is she's going out and killing people, and everyone's like, oh right, this was the whole point. Like this is the thing that she now has to do because she won, and she has to go out and kill people. Surprise. She's not killing anyone, guys. She's not killing anybody. She is crafty as fuck. And she's like, not telling anyone is actually setting these people up so that they can get out.
Yeah.
So she has saved as many people as she can. If they were actually shitty people, she'll kill them. But, you know. Like, she's not killing anyone. She's getting them out. And she's not telling anyone this entire time. So, she's keeping it a secret from Dorian. She's keeping it a secret from Chaol and from Nehemia. Because she's still scared shitless from the last book. When the king was like, I know you're a crafty bitch. If you don't step in line and get in line, I will kill all of your friends.
Yeah.
He threatens his own son. Like, I'll deal with my own kid too because he's close to you and I can use him as leverage.
Yeah.
So we're immediately relieved that she's not actually hurting anyone. But none of her friends know. So I I think that the way that they react to it throughout the whole book is like one of my favorite pieces of like character development. But yeah, at the beginning, she's like not telling anyone, and she kind of ends up like alienating herself a little bit. Like she doesn't want to get too close to anyone right out of the gate because she knows the closer that she is to her friends, like the more danger that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
So she, tries to make sure that they can't, that they don't know. Like Chaol wants to help her and like offers or like drops hints that he wants to help her like a couple of times throughout the book, like on her missions, because he's nervous for her and like doesn't want her to get hurt. And each time she's like, no, I don't want him anywhere near this, because if he's near it, it's going to be harder for her to get away with not killing anyone. And then he'll know, and then that puts him in more danger. So she just is like, nope, everyone is going to kind of be at arm's length.
Yeah. There is a really, like, kind of early on, a scene that I really like that kind of gave me the, like, butterfly-y feeling. And I think there's a quote that you like from it that you noted. But when she comes back from her mission, Chaol follows her down into a section of dungeon, is the way it, like, is worded. It's worded in a way where I was like, wait, he knows about the dungeons now? And I was like, huh? What? Where is he going with her? I'm confused. So they get into the spot, and she's like kind of storing off away from him, sort of, just kind of like doing her thing. And he like grabs her wrist and turns around, and he's like, I'm so happy you're safe. Like, so happy you're here. And like, it's the first scene where they like embrace each other really in the book. And it's very sweet. And it's very much, he like kind of like loosens because he's like, she's home and safe.
Mm-hmm.
And that is kind of like the first like real interaction within these first couple chapters that you get where they are friendly towards each other, because you have this like, Dorian is really thinking kind of all of these kind of background thoughts about Celaena. Chaol's also thinking about it, and then so is Nehemia. And then the next scene where Chaol and Celaena actually have a interaction together away from the king and away from everyone, it's like they're kind of back to normal. And you get this idea of like, oh, maybe they're putting on a show so that the king doesn't realize that like they're still friendly. I really kind of enjoyed that little scene. Carrying around dead body parts for weeks isn't exactly God's above you smell horrible, he muttered. It's that whole scene where they go.
Because
he didn't have time to brace herself as he pulled her against him, his arms wrapping tightly around her.
Because this is when she comes back, and when she completes a mission, like, he basically debriefs her.
Yeah.
So she comes into the throne room, she's like, here it is, here's a head, and like a charred, she like messes up the body. Like, she purposefully brings in a like decomposing, like messed up face, like unrecognizable, like gores up these bodies.
So it's like, oh,
and
he fought back.
Everyone is like, oh god, she's like really a brutal killer, and she's really going a little hard with these murders, maybe enjoying them a little too much, and she's just like, I'm bringing in people who are not recognizable as the people that I killed because I didn't kill them. So
so she's pretty much working with like a morgue or whatever it's called in the
she's finding dead bodies.
Yeah, she's using
one of the lines
bodies
that she says is like, it's not that hard to find dead bodies, and I'm like, what? Who do you know that makes it not hard to find dead bodies? But okay.
I mean,
cool.
She is an assassin.
True, she has connections. But Chaol debriefs her after these like missions that she comes back from, and it is one of the reasons that they like their friendship and relationship kind of evolves, because like they end up talking a lot, and it's also one of the reasons why she decides to not pursue any relationship with Dorian at the end of the first book, is that she knew it would be really hard to like have to perform her duties and also be in any sort of relationship with the king's son. So her relationship with Chaol like sort of evolves out of necessity of like they have to talk with each other because he's the captain of the guard and she's the assassin that goes out and takes care of the outside threats.
Mm-hmm.
But they end up talking a lot. They end up going on runs together. So, like, their relationship is evolving a lot, and you learn a lot of that in the first couple chapters of the book.
Yeah, they keep up a lot of the like champion training from book 1.
Yeah.
And you learn that
Because
they
she's
are
the assassin
continued
now,
to
so,
do
like,
like they're continuing to do it throughout
yeah,
book 2.
they would still be training together because she's putting in a lot of work.
Yeah, and the first few chapters, like those first couple chapters, really talk about how they like it still has their banter in there where like he's giving her a hard time about doing it one way and she's like, you're an idiot, I'm gonna do it this way anyway.
Yeah.
Which I think is great.
You should be more careful. It's like, yeah, okay, thank you. I didn't ask, but cool.
Be careful. I'm an assassin, you idiot. This is my job.
Just let me do my job. So, as we've gotten like our kind of, we have fallen back into the kind of cadence of where our characters are, and basically at the end of the same chapter is where we get our introduction to Mort. So she goes down to try to contact Elena because Elena just kind of dips at the end of the last book. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of questions. We have a lot of questions. I'm sure she has a lot of questions. So she goes down to try to kind of summon her or talk with her. And Mort just starts talking. Just a door knocker just starts talking out of nowhere to Celaena. Mm-hmm. And Celaena is like, what? Who are... You're a door knocker. You're an inanimate object. Mm-hmm. And it's super cool that he chose to keep his mouth shut through an entire book and said nothing, and then just now we're here. He was there the whole time and just said nothing.
Yeah. So he is, for reference, he's the door knocker on the iron. It was an iron door to the sarcophagus. So she passed through the door.
Yeah, the
many
skull
times
knocker
in book 1. And there's probably in book 1 a notice of a knocker being on the door that I just can't remember. Because that's how SJM likes to do us. She likes to do us dirty sometimes. And she likes to sneak little things in, and then you're like, oh, no, duh. She talked about it in book 1, but you just forgot.
The skull knocker seemed to smile at her, its hollow eyes boring into hers. Gods above, she should just leave. But her fingers were somehow reaching for the door handle, as if an invisible hand were guiding her. Aren't you going to knock? Celaena leapt back, a dagger already in her hand, angled to spill blood as she pressed herself into the wall. It was impossible. She must have imagined it. The skull knocker had spoken, and its mouth had moved up and down. Yeah, and then she goes on to talk about, like, Elena had never... No one ever mentioned this. It also points out that it has a tongue, which is a detail that none of us needed, but thanks, Sarah.
Staring at her with gleaming metal eyes, the bronze skull clicked its tongue. It had a tongue.
He calls her pathetic. I'm attached to a door. I can't harm you. He gives me such, like, sassy Surreal vibes. Like, that he is the Surreal of this book. And if, for anyone who's not aware, the Surreal is a character in ACOTAR who is basically like every meme online about the Surreal is that the Surreal is the one who spills all the tea.
Yeah.
So Mort
knows a lot, but sort of
holds back such useful, important information constantly, and then reveals that he already knew that later. So just the whole book is us just being like, if you knew, could you had said 5 chapters ago would have been real great, Mort, please. Come on.
And then he does like, what do you want from me? I'm just a door knocker. You're just like, bro,
I'm a door knocker. I can't do anything. He like gives her shit for like not knocking ever. Like, do you have any manners at all? It's like, it's a door.
I just think my favorite like part of their like first interaction is she responds to him, can I expect all our encounters to be this pleasant? Aren't you even gonna knock after all of that? Because so she still doesn't knock after this whole interaction. And he's like, still? Like, I wanted you to knock. That was the whole reason I started talking about.
He gives one of my favorite lines, which is also a lore drop, and I'm just good for anyone who hasn't finished this book yet. This is the big spoiler that happens in this book. So if you're gonna read it, go away. Come back later.
Yeah, don't be here. I'm assuming.
He asks her what her name is. And he says, "What's your name?" She says, "Celaena Sardothien," she ground off. The skull barked a laugh. Oh, that's too funny. The funniest thing I've heard in centuries. I'm so proud of myself because I made it through the entire first book. I made it through the entire first episode without accidentally calling this bitch Aelin. And I'm so proud. It was the one thing that I had messaged most of our friends being like, I'm scared. Because if I call her Aelin before it is time, I'm going to cry. Celaena Sardothien is Aelin Galathinius, who is, for anyone who can't put things together, would be the rightful, ruler of Terrasen, if they were still alive. Mm-hmm. So, she's great and amazing, and I'm just happy that I didn't spoil it in the first episode. That's all I cared about.
Yeah, so this is one of the, hints you get in the book.
This is the first time where it really gets,
this is your first hint where he
poke.
pretty much... Mort smirked as the door slightly swung open. "Celaena Sardothien," he said to himself, and began laughing again. Celaena hissed in his direction and kicked the door shut. So he just, when I read this as, a first-time reader, I had no idea. I was like, why is he just, making fun of her name? That's kind of rude.
It's in yellow for me. When I went through the book again, I re-tabbed all of my new stuff in yellow rather than blue. And I tabbed it in yellow because when I reread it, I was like, oh, shit. I'm stupid. But also, it would be very Mort to just laugh at her for having a name.
Yeah, and as you learn their dynamic, it's just how he reacts to things as well. He just kind of is a smartass to her. So I read it as he's just being a smartass. Because she kind of made fun of his name. And so I just assumed he was making fun of her name in revenge.
Yeah. So she goes down there to find Elena, and she's not there because she basically had used up too much of her strength the last time. So she's not around, and she starts asking. She talks with Mort, and Mort is Mort's basically pushing the same agenda that Elena is of this is your responsibility now. You have to go and deal with this. You have to fix this and figure out what's going on in the King's Castle. And she's like, I want to stay alive. I want to protect my friends. And to do that, I have to keep doing these other things. I can't deal with this. And he says, Mort just glowered at her. You're that selfish, that cowardly. Why did you come down here tonight, Celaena? To help us all, or just to help yourself? Elena told me about you, about your past. Shut your rutting face, she snapped and stormed up the stairs. This frustrates me throughout the entire book, is that this continually happens to her, of people calling her a coward and not doing anything about things. It makes me feel sad every time because she has been through just the worst shit. And once you get to the end of the book and you realize that she's not just some random citizen from Terrasen, she is literally the person who is all of these rebels, all of these rebels are putting their hope in her actually being alive, in her existing, without any of them actually knowing that she's alive or exists. And everyone's just telling her, you're being selfish and cowardly. It's her entire family was kind of annihilated.
Mother and father were
then
slaughtered in the same bed that I was sleeping in.
And I'm just girl gets to be a little selfish and cowardly, okay?
Then she went and lived in Endovir for a year.
She went and had to go become an assassin because it was the only way she could survive. And then she got sent to Endovir and had to survive that. Mm-hmm. And then had to go and fight to be the King's champion to be alive. for maybe a chance at some freedom. Just a chance. Little nugget.
Yeah.
I don't blame her at all for being cowardly or being hesitant, because I don't even think it's cowardly. I think it's like she's obviously not doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that, like, with Mort, I don't know how much he knows. Because if he knows a lot,
I think he
should
maybe
be able to
tries to
figure
get
out.
her
Should be able to figure out that she's not killing anyone, so he knows she's doing something.
I think he's trying to get her to, like, admit. It feels like every character is, like, trying to bully her into, like, stepping
more
over the
than
edge,
what
because
she
she
says
like
she
toes
is.
the edge of, like, good and bad throughout all the books. Because
Yeah.
even when she was an assassin, they touch on stuff in book 1 where she's like, she talks about, like, I only killed people that, like, deserved it. And you can
Yeah.
see as you go into book 2, she's not killing the people the king is telling her to kill. So, like, she has always kind of towed that line of, like, the good and bad, where she makes people think she's bad, but she's not actually. So it feels like anytime Mort says things like this, or Elena says things like this, or even Nehemia at one point says things like this, they're really trying to get her to, like, stand up and, like, be outwardly good instead of pretending to be this bad person when they know, like, deep down who she is. Granted, I don't think it's kind. I don't think it's a good way to do that. Like, but
Yeah.
I mean, it is a fantasy book, so maybe in the time period, it would be considered how they get people to do shit. But
yeah. So she ends up she can't get in touch with Elena.
mm-hmm.
She has her fight with Mort, and she basically just goes back to her room. Kind of the next part of the book is around how she meets up with Archer Flynn. So Archer, who we mentioned before, is someone that she knows from her past, but the way that he gets introduced to the book is that he's her next target. So she is told by the king when she brings in the last target that her newest target is Archer. And
she has 30 days.
Yeah, she's like 30 days to, like, take care of him,
mm-hmm.
which seems like both a long time and not enough time to, like, plan a murder, but I guess she doesn't technically have to, like, get away with it. So, I don't know. It does kind of seem like a lot. Like, she could probably just go figure it out. But she does mention that, like, because he is this very kind of famous or sought after courtesan, that, like, he's guarded really well because like, people would absolutely, like, just try to get close to him. So she basically, like, enlists Chaol in having
a fake date.
Fake run-in. Yeah, they have, like, a fake run-in with him. And Celaena, like, basically makes Chaol go with her. And they go to, like, bump into him. Physically, she literally just runs into him, like out and about.
Oh my god.
Yep. Oh my gosh, this is crazy. And they kind of catch up a little bit, and they talk about, like, oh, I haven't seen you in forever. I haven't seen you since you were 13, and
you really filled out.
Uses,
and Chaol's like,
yeah, great.
Grunting in the background.
He uses a nickname for her while they're talking. He calls her Lena, which at the end of the conversation, because of course she notices that he's being grumpy, she tells him, you know, I absolutely hate it when he calls me Lena. And, like, placates him just a little bit. And he goes, so the next time I want to piss you off, and she goes, don't even think about it. Like, she's doing an olive branch, and you're like, how can I use this against her? It's like, Chaol, no.
Take 1 step forward and 2 steps back.
Do not be dick, Chaol, okay? Please. Yeah. I am going through this entire reread. I will try to see the bright side to Chaol. I will try. But that one was annoying. I was like, come on, man. He does, although he's being a little baby, she does have a really good line during the whole interaction when she chooses to like take him with her. She says, just be grateful I consider you a worthy accessory. Because he's all butthurt that he's like, why am I coming with you? It's like, you're here to stand pretty next to me.
Yeah.
Like, I need to have a man escort me through this place, so you're here. He's like, oh, I'm just here as an accessory. She's
pretty.
Like, yeah, but you're a worthy accessory, so it's fine.
Yeah. So she gets kind of intel from Archer a bit, and not necessarily intel of her interacting with him. She gets intel in the sense of she follows him around. So she is kind of stalking him for a period of time prior to them running into each other, and then she also stalks him a bit after, just to kind of see where he goes, see he's interacting with. She's trying to get this. She doesn't believe that he's a bad guy. So like she doesn't believe that he is part of this like rebel group that the king like knows about. She is like, how could he be? He's such a like staple in the public eye because of like who he is and who he grew up to be. And he puts on kind of this show of like, I just want to live my life and then like be done with this. Like I'm just trying to pay back my debt and be done with this. Because you get this notion between his interaction with the person that trained him and her interaction with Arabin is that in the end, they owe them for their training. And there's like some numerical sum that is associated with that. Which,
yeah, I mean, they're both in the same situation of she has to continue to do this so that she can gain her freedom. And it's the same way of like, he has to continue to do his thing so that he can gain his freedom. And that's all he's worried about. She's convinced that that's all he's worried about.
Yeah.
And so, she wants to track his movements to see if like both he meets with anyone suspicious, but also if he's going to be meeting with anyone suspicious, like she wants to figure out who those people are.
Yeah, so at the end of chapter 8, Celaena stood in front of the bars to Caltaine Rompier's cell. The once beautiful lady was curled against the wall, her dress soiled and her dark hair unbound and matted. She had buried her face in her arms, but Celaena could still see her skin gleaming with sweat and had a slightly grayish hue and the smell. She hadn't seen her since the duel, since the day Caltaine had drugged Celaena's water with bloodbane so she would die at Kane's hand. Once she defeated Kane, Celaena had left without witnessing the screaming fit that Caltaine had thrown, so she'd missed the moment where Caltaine had accidentally confessed to poisoning her, claiming to have been manipulated by her former beau, Duke Parrington. The Duke had denied her accusation, and Caltaine had been sent down here to await her punishment. 2 months later, it seemed that they still didn't know what to do with her, or didn't care. Hello, Caltaine, Celaena said quietly. Caltaine lifted her head, her black eyes gleaming in recognition. Hello, Celaena. They don't really say why she goes down.
It could just be like to find out. I mean, she does say that she has questions for her.
Yeah.
She asks about Roland.
Roland, that's right.
So Roland and her had been introduced like a chapter before this, and he's very much like he actually is pretty similar to Dorian, like comes off similar to Dorian in the first book as like that playboy prince that like doesn't really give a shit about anything.
Yeah.
But that's what she is going down there for. She goes down there to try to figure out like who is he, get more information that's not going to be like tainted from Chaol or tainted from Dorian, because they both have like history. Like Chaol has history with Roland, and Dorian is his cousin. So yeah. So, and she basically says, none of us can be trusted. Don't trust any of us, but especially Roland.
Yeah, so she asks about Roland to Caltaine. She goes and visits her. There's a point where I have it marked. At the end of that conversation, Celaena feels bad because obviously she's been in a similar position. She went to Endovir. She knows what it feels like to sleep on dirt. She knows what it feels like to be cold and just like not eating and just like be run down and not want to be here anymore. So she tosses her cloak to Caltaine, which I think is also another glimmer of us knowing that Celaena is leaning on that good side and not the bad side. Because even though Palpatine did these things to her, she still believes that she was manipulated in some way. She just doesn't know. And so she throws her cloak down, and Celaena turns around to leave. And Palpatine says, sometimes, Palpatine said softly, and Celaena paused. Sometimes I think they brought me here. Not to marry Parrington, but for another purpose. They want to use me.
Yep.
And that you get that from book one. Like, you get this feeling that, like, she's being manipulated in some way. And this really solidifies it for me. That they brought her here because of something. And they're using her in some way. She's also...
She's 100% a pawn. Like, she mentions in this conversation that they're having too, she says that she hears wings flapping. She's been getting headaches. She's been getting headaches since book one, but headaches become a very big thing throughout this entire book. Everyone's getting headaches. It's a little stressful.
So pretty much they say they want to use me. Use you for what? They never say. When they come down here, they never tell me what they want. I don't even remember. It's all just fragments. Shards of a broken mirror, each gleaming with its own individual image. Celaena kind of doesn't jump in on this conversation. She just kind of lets Palpatine talk, because she kind of she goes into this, like, she just starts talking and kind of like disassociates.
She doesn't trust that what she's saying would be real or anything that's not just like her rambling, because she doesn't know if they're just like still giving her drugs to deal with her opium addiction. But she does say, as she wraps Celaena's cloak around herself, she says, something is coming and I am to greet it. And like, that is very, I don't know if premonition is a word, but I'm going to use it as a word. It feels like a premonition, because so much of Palpatine up until this point has been pretty on the nose in terms of what she says.
Yeah.
And we haven't really found out, like, what they were giving her before, or whether she's still, I don't know, like, under their thrall, or if they're still giving her whatever is making her, like, see these things or know these things. And also Celaena's just fucking pissed, because, like, they just, like, left her down there. Like, she's not dumb. Like, she knows that she did something that she wasn't supposed to, but, like, that she 100% got manipulated into doing it. And the fact that they're still going, this, like, Parrington is still going down there, and, like, what? They're just, like, continuing
at this point,
to
you
visit
don't
her
really
and
know.
continuing
She's
to
just
drug
getting...
her.
Yeah.
And Celaena's like, that's fucked up, which is one of the reasons why she's, like, kind to her, at least in that moment, because she's very sympathetic to being imprisoned.
Yeah.
And she tells Nehemia about it, like, right after. And Nehemia is also like, bastards. Nehemia's, like, just as pissed. Surprise. Men suck. Men in power, especially, double suck.
Yeah.
And all of the women are pissed about it. And they end up, like, they don't really do anything about it, but they're just, like, they just recognize that, like, she's in a really shit situation that she got herself in, but probably no one was around to help her.
Yeah, they saw that she wanted to marry Dorian. Like, they kind of used that aspect of her, which I'm sure most women or ladies of Otterlin were raised to want to marry the prince, to be completely honest, to become royalty, because that is, like, the top dog in that time. So for her to think that way, like, it really doesn't seem any different than all the people that kind of stand around when Chaol and Celaena go running because he comes back with his shirt off. Like all the women that just are sitting in the garden like, oh my god, he might like me.
Maybe I'll bump into him.
This is the point where Nehemia also kind of gives the idea we talked about earlier of like she gives a little hint that she's part of this like rebel force because she talks about how she believes that if Aelin ends up being alive, that she is the one and Terrasen is the place that could take back kind of their land and take back the crown in the sense of like freeing people from Otterlin.
Yeah, this conversation is really where you get more
Of that Terrasen lore.
More history about Terrasen and like a look into what their political structure and their political power was before it crumbled. And they do mention too that, you know, they have a conversation about they were wildly powerful. They were very strong, but also they were
blindsided.
They didn't want war. Like they were very peaceful. So like they stayed within their own borders. They didn't want to have to deal with any of that. And the only reason that they were taken out is because it was a complete surprise attack. There was no warning. There was no,
there was nothing that happened.
There were no tensions that built up. It was just annihilation and out of nowhere.
And they kind of give hints that, like, throughout.
That's why they were.
Is like, what does the king have that he can just wipe out the strongest nation?
And they went for them first. Like, that was the first group that they went for because they were that powerful. So if they went for a smaller nation, they would be the first ones to have been, like, to try to attack or protect that group. So they just went for the powerhouse first. And then without that powerhouse to help protect any of the other nations, like they just kind of other places started slowly crumbling. And Nehemia, this is the first time that Nehemia starts saying like, oh, wouldn't it be great if that court still existed? Like they would be, if they were able to like come back, they'd be unstoppable. Like they would be the one who could rival the king's court here. And Celaena's like, yeah, that sucks. That's not a thing. Anyways.
This is awfully heavy discussion for breakfast. Maybe we should talk about something else. Let's just tuck into bed and read and not do anything else.
You want to take a nap?
Yeah. She kind of like...
Breakfast was a lot. That was delicious. I'm going to go have food coma now. That was fun.
She really, kind of looking back through this as like reading it, obviously for a second time, it really, there are little bits and pieces of her kind of like dismissing things that people are saying that really tie to her history that she's kind of like hiding, or you find out in the end she's hiding. One thing that I just saw that I did not highlight, but is a big thing, is that Nehemia is discussing whether or not Terrasen could come back and like be a strong thing.
Yep.
And Nehemia turns and looks at Celaena and says, do you think another court like that could ever rise again? Not just in Terrasen, but anywhere. I've heard the court in Wendelin still follows the old ways, but they're across the ocean and do us no good.
Yep.
At the end of this book, Celaena is sent to Wendelin.
Yep.
Which is...
It's great!
A very big thing, and I'm very excited.
Now you're more excited. Like, you've made that connection now, and you're like, oh, okay, great. Now I know what this next book's going to be about. Yes. So that is... It's the thing that's weird to me is the fact that it's only mentioned... Wendelin's, like, really only mentioned that one time. Other than when we start to get to the end of the book. But once we get to the end of the book, like, they don't bring that back up again. So you completely forget the significance of Wendelin until you get back to the end. Like, I do wish that she had brought something like that back up, because, girl, you got like 350 more pages in here before we start talking about Wendling again. I don't remember that. I'm sorry. That's not my
This
brain
is
skill.
Chapter 9.
Chapter 9.
It's
we don't
not brought
talk
up
about
again
Wendling again until like
50.
the last thing. Yeah, so only criticism would be maybe if we could have talked about Wendling a little bit again before the end of the book about what's going on there.
Yeah,
but
you don't learn anything about it except for the fact that it is another place across the ocean. You don't know who is there.
Yeah, they just kind of, like, at the end of the book, they just kind of say, like, it's over there. Go there. So she gets sent there at the end of the book to go, like, basically kill
the
them.
leader.
Like, deal with the court that's over there. And it's because of, like, basically what Nehemia is saying of, like, they still follow the old ways. So they're another court that would possibly rival the king, that would possibly rival Otterlin, but they don't really have, like, a clear or strong leader. Like, it wasn't as powerful of a nation as Terrasen was. So Nehemia she's pulling so many strings, and it's so fun to reread these because Nehemia is just like, she's not a master manipulator, but she is such a good, like, puppet master of, like, trying to put all the pieces into the right spot to, like, launch this thing off the ground. And she goes back and forth so much throughout the book too, of, like, being helpful and then being unhelpful, which, like, super throws you off track. Because of she's, like, she ends up working with Celaena to work on, like, the word marks and other, like, lore stuff that gets dropped throughout the book. And then she works with, like, other people throughout the book and steers Celaena off of doing the word marks because Nehemia wants to go and figure out what's going on before she involves Celaena. So it's like you end up going through this roller coaster of, like, does she want her to be a rebel? No. But kind of. But no. Maybe. The whole time.
You get this feeling, like, now looking at this, I get this feeling that, like, Nehemia knew something was up in book 1 with Celaena. And it feels like she knows who she is. And she knows that because of Elena. Because she has a relationship with Elena. And, like, they have talked in the past, and you get that information. And so it feels like it was part of Nehemia's mission to get Celaena, like, really ramped up. And so she's kind of like, like you said, do I want her to be rebel-y, or do I want her to trust me, but I also want her to know that these things can happen, but I don't want her to write me off immediately. So, like, she kind of, like, weaves in these little things of, like, what do you think about Terrasen and, like, being a thing? And she's like, and that's when Celaena's like, I have no thoughts.
Now that I'm thinking back about it and I'm, like, re-looking at all of our notes, this entire part 1 of this book is just, it's, like, all about Nehemia. It's how Nehemia has, like, put everything in motion and in place. She goes and, like, so Celaena ends up going and talking with Archer, who's the person that she's supposed to kill, but she doesn't want to kill him. So she goes and has a conversation with him and is like, hey, don't want to kill you, but for me to not kill you, I have to give the king something. So you have to help me find the rebels that you're supposed to be working with. Like, give me the info. And he is like, okay, cool, yeah, I can do that. We'll work together because I don't want to die. And the month that you have to kill me will be great because that's the amount of time that I need to, like, liquidate all my assets into money so I can get out of here. So Archer's trade is basically a group of people that he knows are gaining power in Rifthold. It wasn't he didn't necessarily say, like, oh yeah, I'm working with rebels and, like, here's the list of the people. He's like, no, I'm not working. I'm not working with the rebels, but I know of a group of people that might be rebels. Don't know, but they're definitely gaining power. So she gives...
I hear things when I'm at
Yeah.
these like higher up people's homes.
This is what I've got. Sorry, this is the best
Yeah.
I've got. So she starts like kind of tracking those people, and one of the people that she is on that list is like ends up having a party later, and she goes to the party
With Archer.
and with Archer to basically like snoop. So she breaks into this man's office basically in his place, and like snoops around and finds a book that's got word marks on it. Mm-hmm. And she's like, cool, great, this is mine now, I'm taking this. And ends up like getting caught trying to get out. She like tries to fake the whole like, I'm a harmless woman up here crying
something happened,
over my lost lover.
Like I asked for a place to just sit and be alone, and your like maid or someone, housekeeper let me in.
The guy's like,
then he gets
bullshit,
really close.
No one has a key.
Yeah, my housekeepers don't have a key. And then he
basically just tries, like, attacks her.
Pulls out a dagger that is laced with bloodbane, right?
Oops. I think so. I don't know.
I think it's bloodbane. I think it circles back to bloodbane again.
Gloriella. It's Gloriella.
Sure.
Gloriella or Gloriana? I don't know.
Maybe.
One of those.
She smells it or something, so she knows what's going to happen to her body.
Yeah. So she basically, like, has to hightail it out of there. She does get the book.
Mm-hmm.
On the book,
it is only with the eye that one can see rightly. Yeah.
So she's like, it literally says in the book, what in the hell did it mean?
Uh-huh.
So she hightails it out of there, very scared because she's like, she knows how terrible this poison is and is trying to make it back to the castle before it basically will paralyze her, and she will like be completely defenseless and alone and won't be able to do anything if they can track her down. She does end up killing him before she gets out, but like it's gonna be pretty obvious who did it because a woman like sprints out the building. So they're trying to she jumps out the window, and they're trying to like chase her down, and she's just hauling ass to the castle. She makes it to the castle and makes it all the way to Chaol and is able to just tell him the name of the poison before she just passes out.
There was one door down this hall that she had to reach, one room where she'd be safe. She kept her hand on the stone wall, counting the doors as she passed. So close. Her cloak caught on a handle of a door as she passed by and ripped away. But she made it to that door, to the room where she'd be safe. Her fingers didn't quite feel the grain of wood as she pushed against the door and swayed on the threshold. Chaol, she moaned, seeking that familiar face again. But he was already running, smashing through his office. He bellowed her name as her knees buckled and she fell. She saw only the golden brown of his eyes and held on long enough to whisper, Gloriella, before everything tilted and went black. So, Chaol doesn't catch this at first. And so he's like, she's covered in blood because she just killed a man. And she killed him in kind of a brutal way because she was like, I need to end him quick because he says what poisoned her. Or he says, don't you want to know what's on the blade? It's enough to, like, inebriate you until my guards get here. And then we'll question you. Yeah. And she, like, sniffs the air and she's like, oh, shit, I know exactly what this is. And I have X amount of minutes before I'm completely paralyzed.
Yeah.
And so that's when she books it, gets to him, tells him what it is. And so he immediately is like, what's happening? She slices this dude's throat, and it's like she's sprayed with blood. It's like described as being sprayed with blood. And so she's covered in so much blood.
I'm wondering if this is another instance where she is using her, like, Fae heritage to survive.
Mm-hmm. She smells it. It's not something that like
It's not even that. It's the fact that like one of the things that like
she
didn't make sense in my brain is like, how does she get back to the castle? Because like if
so
he
fast.
coats it, he talks about like, oh, you'll be paralyzed like for literally like you'll be paralyzed by the time my guards get here.
Mm-hmm.
And
Which is like
she
minutes.
makes it all the way to the castle before it like actually takes her out.
Mm-hmm.
Like we find out at the end of the book that like she's Aelin,
Mm-hmm.
and Aelin is like descended from Fae. So like
yeah, and
she
is,
has she's not
healing powers.
magic necessarily, but she's stronger and more powerful than like a normal human. And I'm just now realizing that this is probably another instance where like she survives things that other people wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like another hint that she is
something more than just another person.
Sarah, you tricky bitch. God damn it. This is
So-
now the third time that I'm walking through this, and I'm still like, oh shit, there's more.
Yeah. So he obviously she whispers this thing, and he immediately just sees her collapse to the floor, and is like, she's covered in blood. So just like rips at her clothes, like, where is she bleeding? Where is she bleeding? Notices it's just a small cut on her arm, and then he's like, how is she passing out? Like, what's going on? And that's when the panic cleared enough for him to remember that she whispered Goriella. And so he immediately, like, we need an antidote now to this very specific drug. So he, of course, goes full swing. There's a quote, a conversation that really, I think, in these early chapters describes his interaction with Celaena very well, like the way they interact with each other. He put his head in his hands, bracing his elbows. This is after she's woken up. And he goes, before you say anything else, just tell me this. Did you kill Davis because you were snooping in his office? He caught you, then cut you with the drugged blade? A flash of teeth, a flicker of rage in those golden brown eyes. Her insides twisted up at the memory, but she nodded. Very well, he said. Are you going to tell the king? He crossed his arms. No. Because I don't feel like having to argue that you're still capable of spying without getting caught. My men will keep their mouths shut too, but the next time you do anything like this, I'm going to throw you in the dungeons. For killing him, for scaring the hell out of me. Do you know what you looked like when you showed up? I'll hazard a guess and say, bad? It's just like the way he goes, if I hadn't burned your dress, I'd make you look at it right now. You burned my dress? Like, she's just like, what the heck? So it goes into this, like, he's really caring, and she's, like, sassing him. Like, you burned my fucking dress? How dare you do that?
Well, I think it's, like, he doesn't... She's like, yeah, I went out to do a thing, and I had to stab someone. Like, hi, it's Tuesday. What are we talking about? And he's like, I haven't had to deal with this kind of emotion before. I don't know how to handle it. I'm not... I don't talk to women who possibly die on a regular basis, maybe. I don't know. And she's like, all right, well, I could have gotten the blood out of that dress, probably. Baking soda, something. You know? It's a nice dress.
Yeah, this is also the first time he covers for her, or tries to. So it's the first time he's really taking a step kind of against the king.
Loyalty.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Mm-hmm.
Who is his loyalty with now?
Yeah, this is kind of why I tabbed this area, because it really is like he's been teetering for a while, and this is really a step towards Celaena. Like, it really is. He is saying, well, I care about her more, I guess.
Yeah. He does some things right this book, I guess.
At the very end, though, which, like, my heart, this is like her inner monologue, and she goes, she'd hardly known where she was going while the Goriella tore through her. All she'd known was that she had to go someplace safe, and somehow she had wound up exactly where she knew she'd be safest. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, he does he puts her above the king regularly. But I think it's also the same way that, like, he puts Dorian above the king, too.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that he ever had an intention of joining the king's guard because he wanted to protect the king so much as he wanted to be... Like, he's very invested in Dorian as the next king.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily think that he... I mean, I don't know. I don't know if he would have gone down that same path if, like, it weren't for Dorian. Yeah. So she doesn't necessarily just scare the shit out of Chaol, but, like, scares the shit of kind of everybody.
Like, who was... There's one other guard that they talk about. It's like Ress or something is his name.
Yes.
His character is like...
It's not Reese.
It's like R-E-S-S or R-E-S or something like that.
Yeah.
He is in kind of like the background. He kind of is always just there sometimes. So he's usually guarding the rooms. He was kind of always guarding her room. So like they chatted a bit and like they had a little banter. And so he saw her, which was a big reason she knew that she was going to be okay. Like there was like a note of her seeing him as she was going through and knew that he wouldn't... I'm going to go through this entrance because he's going to be here and he's going to recognize me and be okay with me coming through this way and not really ask questions. He plays a role as being like a like pseudo friend. Like I think he's a friend.
Second in command.
Yeah.
And he's like the only other named guard that we get pretty much. And yeah, I mean, he's the one that's, I think, Chaol trusts the most.
You have a note for this chapter. This is also where, this is one that I didn't tab until I went through a second time. I tabbed it because Dorian has a dream. And I tabbed it because it kind of brings this like... It brings him into this like nightmare realm, sort of, that like all of these people have been seeing. He has a dream where it's like a nightmare of teeth and shadows and glinting daggers, just a nightmare, is how it's described. But in this, he is described as sweating despite the fierce cold that is in his bedroom. Similar to the headaches, Dorian experiences fierce cold when he has certain things coming to the surface, which, big spoiler for later in the book, Dorian has magic. And at this point, he doesn't know it yet.
This is the first time that... This is the first little, like, breadcrumb that you get to the reveal that does happen later in the book of he has magic.
Yeah. Every time he also experiences magic as you go through the book, which you don't know at the time, there is a fierce cold around him. Either a chill happens, Celaena mentions being cold, Chaol mentions being cold. Someone mentions a cold happening when something happens that can't be described, and it always has to do with Dorian's magic.
Yeah, he's like having some type of like strong emotion, or like he has a nightmare, and he wakes up. As he turned, he could have swore he caught a glimpse of a faint ring of frost where his body had lain on the couch. But when he looked back to see it more fully, there was nothing there.
Yep.
So this is that first bit that you get of, oh, it's not just... There's not just weird stuff going on with Nehemia and Celaena and Chaol. Like, Dorian's also got some kind of weird...
some shit going on.
He got... Why are we talking about all the cold? What are we doing? Celaena is, like, also having...
She has a dream the same time. So
Yeah.
at the same time, so there's a note that Dorian jerked awake at the sound of a clock chiming. In the next section, Celaena heard a distant clock chime somewhere. In this same like segment, she had a musty, thick like breeze where she felt it.
Yeah, something like leads her down to
Yeah, to
like
go.
back to where Elena,
Mm-hmm.
like back towards the library to where Elena was. But then she like feels something like pulling at her and like goes a slightly different direction, and it ends up leading her to this iron door.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like hearing like scratches as she makes her way down there, and is like just convincing herself that like someone's messing with me, or it's like Chaol, or it's just in my head. And she comes to this iron door and starts immediately like thinking about like, okay, why is there an iron door? Iron is used to keep people with magic, trapped or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what this is, but I hear things, and there's eyes. We
Mm-hmm.
love eyes. It's
Yep.
eyes, headaches, cold.
Yep.
Big things that keep coming up in this series. A rat. It was probably a rat. Sure, Celaena, of course. It
Absolutely.
was just a rat.
Definitely a rat.
It was just a rat, and she had no interest, none, in being proven wrong. So she like finds the door. Uh, she has a feeling that it's connected to the word marks. She hears scratching, and she's like, "I'm out. I'm good. I'm gonna go now." She's like, does the one thing that I wish all horror movie people did of like, hey, you find something scary and terrifying, or like, there's a door. Don't go down the basement steps. You'll
Mm-hmm.
probably live.
Yeah.
So she's like, I'm gonna go, and just leaves. Um, Best decision she's ever made.
Kind
Okay,
of our
so this is
next
when we
scene,
cut
we
to.
go into the celebrations. So I don't necessarily think the celebration of Prince Holland's return is very necessary to like touch on.
I don't think we
However,
need to.
there is a person, Raina Goldsmith is a character that's introduced. She's there for one chapter and she is a singer and she sings about magic. And in the end, this gets her pretty much executed by the king. At the very end, so it's the scene they're at dinner, she's singing. Celaena hadn't heard the song since her childhood, which is another touch of her kind of having this like magical fae background. She hasn't heard this song sung in years. She thinks she knows what the song's about. Chaol knows what the song's about, and everyone just assumes like maybe the king doesn't catch on. He does. He knows exactly what she's singing about. Hours later, the guards shove the singer kind of down into the dungeons, and they ask any last words. And she said, "I have worked for 10 years to become famous enough to gain an invitation to this castle. 10 years so I could come here and sing the songs of magic that you tried to wipe out. So I could sing those songs and you would know that we are still here, that you have outlawed magic, that you may slaughter thousands, but we who keep the old ways still remember." And so
Yeah.
to me that was like a very pivotal point for Celaena as well because it like woke up this like part of her, which you obviously find out later she's Fae, and so she has a very like deep rooted memory towards magic and feeling towards it.
And like Celaena doesn't necessarily find out that the singer's been killed, but I think it's also very important. It's a good scene because it's one of the like reinforcers in this whole like rebels are gaining power. Like they are gaining power, they are becoming far more strategic. They are now like actually a
Infiltrating
problem or
yeah.
actually becoming like a genuine threat, rather than just kind of up until now where the king has kind of been seen as this like all-powerful thing that no one can stand against, really.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, I think it was important for Celaena because it's more, she's like, no one's letting her escape it. She keeps getting like, everyone's like, people are talking about Aelin, and people talk about the Fae, and people talk about magic, and you know, it's like she's just not able to escape who she is and just ignore it.
It also triggers her to then talk to Nehemia. Like it triggers her to have this conversation with Nehemia about kind of the passageways and all of these things that she's been kind of going through, and bring up the conversation of like word marks, and I know you know about these a little bit more, and I really like want to know more about them. So it like really
This
plays a
scene,
pivotal role into her kind of changing and
yeah,
bringing Nehemia really into her life a bit more.
it's my favorite the way that this was executed, because they like get into a little bit of an argument like while they're talking about this. She's frustrated that all Nehemia's like, all you care about is the fact that your only goal is like your freedom. Like your I can't justify to my family why I'm friends with you. Like you're like an assassin going out and killing all of these people. Like your only goal is your freedom. You have to be able to do something more. And that's kind of when Celaena's like, I'm not killing anyone.
I'm tired of people saying that I'm not doing enough. So here, I'm going to tell you, I haven't killed a single person.
It makes me so happy that she tells Nehemia first. I love Nehemia so much, and it just fills me with joy that she's the person that she chooses to confide in with this first. They talk about the fact that she hasn't killed anyone, how she's gotten away with it, how she's like not planning to kill Archer either, and how Archer is actually feeding her information, and then that's how they like get onto the subject of like, oh, also, you know about word marks, and Archer gave me the name of this guy, and I stole a book from him, and it had word marks in it. So
What
I'm going
does
to show
this
you
say?
this book. Also, you want to go see my secret passage and go look at the tomb down here that also has word marks? I need your help. Come help me, please.
It's the first time she's asking
and
for
just
help.
basically just reads her like completely in,
Mm-hmm.
like other than the big reveal at the end of like who she actually is, like as like Aelin, but basically everything that's happening up until now in the book, Celaena just like completely comes clean with Nehemia. And they go down to the tomb, and Nehemia gets introduced to Mort, and
By
is
him
also
just being,
like,
oh, you brought a friend?
you brought a friend? He's like, hello, Mort. It's like, how is this possible?
Ancient spells,
Celaena
nonsense,
says,
you know.
yep, so good. And then she asks Nehemia to translate what's over the tomb in word marks, and she goes, death, eternity, rulers, standard tomb posturing. This is where she starts to like flip-flop a little bit for me in terms of what does she actually want Celaena to do? Because they just have this fight about like, you're killing people, you're being selfish, you only care about your freedom. And then they go down to the tomb, and Nehemia's like, oh, you're looking into stuff. I don't know if this is important. I don't know if you need to maybe hold off on looking into this. I'll go do some research and I'll get back to you. And you find out later that like she's working with rebels.
Yeah.
And this is one of those points where I'm just like, Nehemia, like you just told her about, she just came clean to you about the fact that she's not like a bad person killing all of these people, and that she's doing the word marks and stuff. Like, work with her. Start, let's go. Like, this is it. And she doesn't tell, like, Nehemia doesn't tell her and keeps her in the dark, and just continues to like pull these kind of strings from the background of like, like, she just must not think that she's ready yet or would accept it, which I don't necessarily think I would disagree with her. That, like, I don't know, at this point, I don't know if Celaena's totally ready to hear, like, okay, cool, great, thanks for coming clean about your
Here
thing.
are the rebels, Archer's part of the
By
team.
the way, I'm working with the rebels to try to take down the king, and we're also looking into these word marks and stuff, so yeah, let's do it. I think Celaena would have a fucking panic attack and freak out and try to make her, she'd be afraid for Nehemia's life.
Yeah. This is kind of also where, in this scene, Celaena starts noticing things a bit more about the tomb because she hasn't really looked around too much at this point. So she gets the word marks and then she starts looking around and she sees some constellations. She's like, wait a minute, what are these? And she notices the stag constellation. And then she's looking at it, the stag, Lord of the North, the symbol of Terrasen, Elena's home country. And this is kind of your first, like, hey, Elena's from Terrasen. She's the queen of Terrasen.
She litters so much stuff in here because up until this point, you don't know Elena's full name.
Yes.
You don't learn it for another couple of chapters when Dorian goes to do some family history check.
Mm-hmm.
But she is a Galathinius.
Yes.
Which is
you know her as Elena Havilyard in book 1.
Yep.
And then in book 2, you get the like, hey, by the way,
here's another name.
Her maiden name.
Yep, where she's from.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't even mention her as being from Terrasen, I think, in the first book.
Not that I recall.
I don't think that they do. I think they only mention that she's...
stag. Because Celaena has kind of the dream about the stag, and then she sees the stag in this area too. So there's just like, the tie is kind of the stag. Don't you dare bite that.
She also, this is when she asks Nehemia to teach her about the word marks. She asks her to tutor her. And of course, Mort has one of my other favorite lines from the book, which is, "Are you sure you're not too dim to understand?" Celaena ignored him. And she basically is like, maybe just the basics? Nehemia smiled. The basics are the hardest part. It's like, okay, well, we'll figure it out.
So they notice that Celaena notices you can only see the face when you stand on the stag, Nehemia whispered. Celaena ran a hand over her face, feeling for any cracks or slight breezes. And then she notices that there's a hole in the eye of this stag. And then she looks through it. She kind of like gets on her tippy toes and like looks through it, and it's nothing. She goes, it's blank. It's just a blank wall. She's like, Mort, what the hell is this wall? Does it make any sense to you why it would be here? Mort, no. Don't lie to me.
Mort.
Lie to you? To you? Oh, I couldn't lie to you. You asked me whether it makes sense. I said no. You must learn to ask the right questions before you can receive the right answers. What sort of question might I ask to receive the right answer? Mort clicked his tongue. I'll have none of that. Come back when you have a proper question. You promise you'll tell me then?
She's so clever.
You promise you'll tell me then? I'm a door knocker. It's not in my nature to make promises. She's like, okay, Mort. You're just a little shit.
Thank you, Mort. You're so helpful. We love you. Thank you.
And this is where she asks if Nehemia will teach her about word marks. Kind of ties into that.
When they're talking about the word marks too, they're talking about they go back to like the riddle, which talks about the eye. Mm-hmm. And she brings up her amulet, which is called the Eye of Elena.
Which she was given by Elena for protection, pretty much.
Yeah. Like in the last book.
In book 1.
And Celaena fiddled with the chain of her amulet, went rod straight. The eye! Do you think this could be the eye? No, Nehemia said. It wouldn't be that easy.
Spoiler alert.
But
it is that easy. It
trust
is
me,
that
it's
eye.
a coincidence. It's
Celaena
not, though.
Was right. It is. She puts it up and it goes on the other side of the tomb later on. And then a light comes through it
Is it
and you
for
can see
that
stuff on the
hole
wall.
in the wall,
Yeah.
though? Because I thought that was the hole that they put Damaris in.
So they put Damaris back, and that's when she goes, oh, the sword has an eye, and she puts it on that, and the light reflects through it into the hole, and she sees it. Or something along those lines. And Mort's like, yeah, it was that the whole time. And she's like, you could have helped me.
Mort is literally the most useless. God damn you, Mort.
It's so funny.
He's infuriating. They end up going to...
So part of this is, since I feel like the king is like onto her shit. If she's not out of the castle, he's like making her do shit. So
yeah,
he
she
pretty much says like, you have to
time.
go on guard duty. So every time Chaol has a meeting with the king, he pretty much is saying that like, we're gonna have this event because my son's here again, or we're gonna have a dinner because of X, Y, or Z. Make sure my champion is there as a guard as well. And so Celaena has to play guard. And so he just wants her to like behave and knows that this is like her nightmare, is standing still and like watching over people. She definitely doesn't want it. So they go to a dinner. And this is another scene that you kind of like fall for Chaol. In book 1, Celaena asks Chaol to dance. And he says, kind of makes a note of like, what would it look like if the captain of the guard dances with an assassin? Mm-hmm. Like, it wouldn't look good. And so that's when Dorian swoops in and then dances with her all night. And so she is on guard. She is outside on like the terrace. She's guarding kind of the steps out to the garden or whatever. And she's kind of standing out there. And she has the door cracked open and she hears music. And he notices that she disappeared. And so he, of course, Chaol is like, where the hell did she go? Like, I have to keep track of her. She couldn't just stand in one spot for an hour, like, blah, blah, blah. And she's down. He steps out and she's dancing by herself, kind of at the bottom of the stairs. And in this...
she can hear the music coming in from in the ballroom.
You could hear the music. And she notices that he came out. And she pretty much says, I heard the music. She immediately goes into, like... I know I'm
Get
doing
off
something
my back,
wrong.
man, okay?
I just want to, like, relax. And so she goes, I heard the music and I just wanted to dance for a few minutes. To just forget everything for one waltz and pretend to be a normal girl. So, she glared at him now. Go ahead and snarl and snap at me about it. What will my punishment be? 3 extra miles tomorrow? An hour of drills? The rack? There was a sort of bleak bitterness in her words that didn't sit well with him. And yes, they would have a conversation about abandoning posts, but right now, Chaol stepped up to the line. Dance with me, he said, and held out his hand to her. And I was just like, oh, Chaol. She also is like taken aback. She's like, what? He's like, what didn't you understand? Where I'm just like, it goes back into them being sassy. He like does something cute, back into them being sassy to each other.
Yeah.
As far as I recall, she said, lifting her chin, at Yulmus, I asked you to dance, and you flat out refused me. You said it was too dangerous for us to be seen dancing together. Things are different now. Dance with me, Celaena. And it's just like, it's so cute. They do dance with each other. This is kind of their second time, like, really touching each other. Because they hug at, like, the beginning. They embrace. He obviously saves her life, and so that's the scene where he chooses her over the king, and so he's getting all these feelings, and they're really like becoming solid now. Thank you, Rocky.
Sorry, audience. I mean, it is a cuter scene than I would even say any of the stuff that happens in the first book with Dorian.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like to Chaol's credit, he doesn't like that she's an assassin, but does at least recognize, like, both of their roles within, like, the situation that they're in, and isn't really under any illusion of, like, oh yeah, like, everything's just gonna be totally fine. You know, Dorian can't just, like, marry her and make her his queen. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
that's a little delusional to think
Yeah.
of. And
There is.
he just kind of, he does, I think, a lot more to not change himself for her, but, like, make that extra effort for
Yeah.
her, for the things that she wants, and, like, deserves to, like, be treated, which I do appreciate.
Yeah, this is another moment where he's like choosing her over even his guard duties in this second, because he's also now taking a like rest and like choosing to dance with her.
Yeah.
So they dance, and in the end, she kind of has this sentiment of saying like, "We'll never be a normal boy and girl, will we?" And he pretty much just says, "No, we won't." And then they
Yeah.
stop dancing. And Dorian sees all of this.
Dorian's been watching, like, the whole time, and Dorian's been kind of in the background, kind of getting over it, if you will.
Yeah.
This entire time that they've been kind of getting closer. Like, they're all friends, so they all talk and see each other and hang out with each other, and he kind of makes the decision of, like, basically what I just said, of, like, he's a little delusional if he just thinks that, like, she's gonna be with him and become queen eventually, and that relationship can be successful. So he kind of just, like, that's not gonna work. I will let her go and, like, kind of not pursue that anymore. And he is watching them dance, and Nehemia kind of comes up, and basically in the same way that Celaena and Chaol have that conversation about being, like, that they're never going to be, like, a normal boy or girl. Nehemia basically has the same conversation with Chaol, or with Dorian, but saying, you know, we can't just have the people that we want. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the people that we end up being with are not going to be, like, just whoever we want. Like, they will serve very specific roles, and that's how it is.
Mm-hmm. It's
And
the like
she,
world of royalty.
yeah, and she asks Dorian too, like, are you going to be a problem for them? Like, don't make yourself a problem for them, because she wants Celaena to have, like, something normal in her life, which is so sweet, and I love it. And he basically is like, yeah, I'm not gonna, that's over, that's done. But in this same conversation,
Mm-hmm.
Nehemia is not just being a good friend, but she's back to pulling her strings, because she has her fingers in everything, and she knows everything. I swear to God. She knows that Dorian has magic. Oh, she definitely knows, because she says, it sleeps. What sleeps? What are you talking about? His magic? His magic is sleeping? When the time comes, when it awakens, do not be afraid. She removed her hand and gave him a sad smile. When it is time, I will help you. She's just too perfect.
Mm-hmm.
She's so sweet. Why, when she had said them, something ancient and slumbering inside him had opened an eye. Ooh.
Another eye.
And God damn it with the eyes, please.
Freaking eyes, man.
I'm gonna go to read, like, any book after this, and it's gonna say, like, eye or headache, and I'm just gonna be like, ah! No, please.
This is also like one of the first times, like after that conversation, it's one of the first times that Dorian kind of outwardly steps or goes against his father.
Mm-hmm.
So he's always thinking things, but he never has actually like stepped out of line and really said anything. So they have a council meeting. Roland brings a like thing of expanding Calculia, which is
Calcutta.
like Calcutta? You're lying. There are L's in that word.
I can bring up the audiobook. I don't know what you want from me.
They're wrong. Calcutta? There's no D.
Calcutta? I don't know.
Calcutta, maybe.
Now I gotta go find that. I gotta go find it in the audiobook.
Calacula. Calacula.
It's definitely not Calcutta.
Culla.
I can't look it up because my phone's over there.
Whatever. It's one of the slave camps. They're talking about expanding one of the slave camps. So there's Endovir, and then there's Cala. Culla. Calacula. Whatever the fuck. I don't care. Anywho. Irrelevant. Doesn't matter how it's pronounced.
You're gonna enrage an entire fandom. There are TikToks on that. You can't say that!
If it's pronounced with a D sound, that's stupid. That's not how letters
Hold on, I'm
work.
looking it up. Give me a second. It's Calacula.
Okay. I was saying it as if that U was an OO. Calacula.
Yes, Calacula. I think
Okay.
when I first heard it, I heard Calcutta.
I was like, Calcutta is not it. You cannot.
I thought it was Calacutta is what I was saying, but it's not
Okay.
Calcutta. It's Calacula.
Okay. I was close. I was close enough. It's not Calcutta, which I was like, not a fucking chance in hell that is pronounced that way. I don't care. Okay. Calacula. Bringing us back.
Rewind.
Roland was at this meeting bringing up expanding Calacula, and Dorian finally is like done holding his tongue. Like, he's done holding back. He pretty much hears in the back of his head what she went through is a blessing compared to what most endure, which is something Nehemia said to him about Celaena and like what she went through in Endovir.
Yeah.
So he says, if we have a surplus of slaves, then why not let some of them go? Surely they're not all rebels and criminals. A growl from down the table, his father. Watch your tongue, prince. He pretty much is like, absolutely not. I'm not doing this anymore. Is this the plan? Now that we've conquered the continent, you'll throw everyone in Calacula or Endovir until no one's left in the kingdoms but people from Otterlin? Silence. You keep tightening the leash and it's going to snap, Dorian said to his father. How about you spend a year in Calacula, and when you're done, you two can sit here and tell me about your plans for expansion. And that's towards Roland and Mullison. So he pretty much is like, why don't you guys go there? And then you can tell us we need to expand. And so his father then snaps, you will mind your mouth, prince, and you will be thrown out of this room before the vote. Oh, okay. You want my vote then? Here it is. No, not in 1,000 years. And he storms off. He storms off into an abandoned part of the castle. Not really abandoned, but like a part no one goes to.
Yeah.
At this point, he has so much anger, he punches a wall and the window explodes. So this is his
from
first
what?
Outward.
What would that be from? Could it be magic?
Yeah, this is his first outward magic is happening. So the stone cracked under his hand, the window shattered, but he had no bruises, no cuts, no broken knuckles. He had no injuries whatsoever. So he, of course, freaks the fuck out and is like,
it's the first time that
what is happening?
Actually happens to him and isn't something that's just in a dream or that someone mentions or that he has just a faint feeling of. It's the first real physical manifestation of his magic that he cannot just explain away.
Mm-hmm.
And he freaks out. And this is, to me, again, to go back to the fact that part one of this book is just Nehemia makes everything happen.
Mm-hmm.
She has this conversation with him and informs him that Roland and the king and the council are going to have this meeting to talk about the slave camps expanding, and then drives him basically to go and stand up for them in this meeting, which then drives him to go up right against his father and turn out outraged because, like, how else was that meeting gonna go?
Mm-hmm.
And then his, like, power finally manifests in this, like, fit of rage and fear and frustration. She's making everything happen.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he like freaks out. That's really when he like starts researching a ton of stuff after
Mm-hmm.
that.
So he first goes and tries to look for Nehemia. Can't find her. You find out later that this was when she was meeting with the rebels. Because she was out at night.
She's gone. She's out.
Yeah.
She's out and about.
Was out and about. He was looking for her. Celaena kind of stumbles upon him, and he is outside her door, and she's like, "What are you doing here? Why are you here?" He's like, "I was looking for Nehemia. I thought she might be in your rooms, and I didn't want to just barge in if she was. So I was just waiting for her to come out to go to bed or something." And then he's like, "Never mind. I just need to talk to her." And so Celaena obviously noticed something wrong and kind of asks him and try to pry some information out, and he doesn't really give it to her. And then he just kind of walks off and tells her, like, to have a good night. Enjoy your cake. She has cake in her hands. Because, you know, it's Celaena. She loves cake.
She's got cake.
Mm-hmm. And it was cake that Chaol brought her, which I liked that little scene.
So, right before, like, at the end of this council meeting, which during the council meeting it's mentioned that Roland has a black ring, which isn't great. So, Roland now also has a black ring that the king and Parrington both had, or both still have. And now Roland has one. And then at the end of that council meeting, Chaol also ends up having a conversation with the king. And he tells Chaol that Nehemia needs to be watched.
Yeah, after this
and
meeting.
Not that she needs to be protected, that she needs to be watched. Because people have threatened her. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't tell Chaol who's threatened her or what the actual, like, anything about it. It's just, there have been threats made against her, and now Chaol's job is to, like, watch her. And Chaol's first reaction is like, cool, great, I'll go let her know. Like, we'll let her guards know. Everything will be chill. And the king's like, no. You will tell no one. You will not inform anyone. You will just take care of it. And, like, figure it out.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, cool. Like, Chaol, no! Not cool. Bad. Not good at all. Like, this is the first part in the book where I'm like, oh, buddy, you were doing so good up until literally right now. We were on an incline. There was improvement. We were happy. And immediately it's like, dude, you need to figure out any other alliance. Any other loyalty would be great. Like, his loyalty to Celaena. Like, he talks about when he asks him, he's like, oh, Celaena's going to be upset about this. And I'm like, yeah, no shit. Like, what are we talking about? So, he doesn't tell her. He doesn't tell Celaena. He doesn't tell Nehemia. He doesn't tell any of her guards. And just is like, okay, cool. I'll take care of it, I guess. They also end up going to the carnival, like around this time, and they meet Baba Yellowlegs, who we mentioned at the beginning of the episode is like one of the witches from the Yellowlegs clan. And she's basically like at this carnival telling fortunes, which is insane because she's like a super powerful witch and is just telling fortunes for many. Which I still don't even understand, like, how the king lets her get away with that. Because, like, how does he not think that that's magic? Like, I don't know. It seems weird.
In the end, you find out he knows who she is.
Yeah, I think she definitely, like, gets away with it because he knows about it already. But, like, I don't know. Maybe it's part of her punishment of, like, you've fallen so low that now you're telling fortunes with your magic that I let you wield and don't kill you. but she like offers to tell Celaena her fortune. Celena's like, no, I'm good, thank you, and
I'm
like
good, I'll
offers it to
pass.
Dorian and Chaol, and they're all like, nah, we'll go. Thanks, that was cool though.
Yeah, so like during that scene, Celaena also has these like a visceral reaction to Baba
She's super
Yellowlegs because
freaked
she's
out by
been
Baba
told
Yellowlegs.
like stories of these witches, and she has like like actual yellow legs and iron teeth and like long creepy fingernails are described because she's like tapping on things and
Yeah.
like
This is the when they meet her, when they meet Baba Yellowlegs is like the first section is told in like Chaol's perspective, and like Chaol picks up immediately on like, oh, Celena's scared
so
and nervous
uncomfortable.
and doesn't want to be here, which is terrifying because she's not scared of like anyone. And
Mm-hmm.
like as soon as they get out of the tent, like they start grilling her like, "Hey, so you're shaking. Are we good?"
She's like,
She's like,
no, I'm
"Nope.
not.
I'm not. I'm not shaking. Everything's fine." But she's like, she's heard the stories. She's known people who have dealt with the witches, and she's just like, you're basically being told by Sarah J. Maas, like, this woman is a force to be reckoned with, and you need to fear her. She is
Mm-hmm.
terrifying.
Yeah.
And they just kind of are like, all right, well, we're not going over there anymore. We're gonna go somewhere else. But she like, they come back because she's like offering to have her fortune. Yeah, they're all like coming back individually because they know that she's this super powerful thing, so they'll like come back for lore. They leave after like getting super freaked out by Yellowlegs.
Mm-hmm.
We find out that Chaol's birthday's coming up. Uh, Chaol gets gifted this is another one that I really liked too. Of Chaol gets gifted a really expensive horse. It's called an Asterian mare.
Mm-hmm.
It's very nice. And Chaol's like, I can't take this. Like, this is a horse that like royalty rides. Like, no, like this is way too expensive, and like I'm not dealing with that. And Celaena just goes, I used to have one of those, and they're like, what?
What
and
do
she's
you
like,
mean?
I stole it. And now that we know that she's Aelin, I'm like, did you steal it, or did like your super rich, fancy?
Did you guys just
She's got
have them?
like now. Yeah, I want to know whether it was actually the name of her
Yeah, I
horse
didn't
was
think
also
about
something
that.
really cute. Casita.
Hmm.
I like that name, Casita. Maybe if I end up with another cat, I'll name my next cat Casita. This is also when like Dorian gets that like first hint that like the two of them are making plans and hanging out together without him, because Dorian asks like, do we like, are there any plans that we've made for your birthday? And Celena's like, we have plans.
Mm-hmm.
And Dorian's like, okay. And she's like, Celena's like planning like a fancy nice dinner or something for his birthday, which is very sweet. And Dorian's like, well, okay, cool. I hope you guys have fun. Night. Bye.
Yeah.
And they go back to the castle. And she, like, this is when Celena's, like, starts getting frustrated with Nehemia because she's taking a really long time to translate the word key stuff.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, I'll just go down and take a look.
Yeah.
I'll just go down by myself. It'll be fine. I won't tell her. It'll be okay.
This is where, so yellow for me is like funny things or like quotes I enjoy. I have multiple highlights in this because I just like this whole entire scene between.
Because we're back to Mort.
Yeah, it's Mort again.
Yes,
and we love Mort. So she goes down.
He's just got the best writing in the book, I swear.
Yeah, and she's like, I have this eye thing. I'm gonna just see because it will perfectly fit in that hole. Like it looks like it perfectly fits. So she pretty much asks like, what is this? Like, what is this necklace? Like, does it hold power? And he's like, of course it holds power. But it's thousands of years old. He's like, so? It's magic. Magical things rarely age. Normal objects, like normal objects do. What does it do? It protects you. As Elena said, it guards you from harm, though you certainly seem to do your best to get into trouble. I think I know what it does. Perhaps it was mere coincidence, but the riddle had been worded so specifically, perhaps Davis had been looking for the same thing. Elena wanted her to find the source of the king's power. You're probably wrong, Mort said. I'm just warning you. She didn't listen. She went right up to the hollow eye in the wall, stood on her tippy toes to look through it to the wall on the other side. Unfastening her necklace, she carefully lifted the amulet to the eye, and it fit, sort of. Her breath caught in her throat. Celaena leaned up against the hole. Nothing. No change at all. Nothing at all. But it's the eye of Elena. It is only the eye that one can see rightly. What other eye is there? You could rip out your own and see if it fits. Which I just think is just
so
hilarious.
Unhelpful.
Yeah. Why won't it work? Do I need to say a spell?
Oh, and this is when she stands there and she goes,
she called
time's rift! Thinking
cackled.
that it's like some sort of passcode.
And then it's just, nothing happened. Mort cackled. She snatched the amulet out of the wall. Oh, I hate this. I hate this stupid tomb. I hate these stupid riddles and mysteries. Fine. Nehemia was right. The amulet is a dead end. And she was a wretched, horrible friend for being so distrustful and impatient. I told you it wouldn't work. Then what will work? The riddle does reference something in this tomb behind that wall, doesn't it? Yes, it does. But you still haven't asked the proper question. I've asked you dozens of questions and you won't give me any answers. Come back, he started, but Celaena was already stalked away upstairs. Just their interactions are so funny all the time.
They're hilarious.
Yeah, and he gives her nothing. Like, no. He's just like,
he never does.
You tried again. Like, all right, cool. See you later. He's also like mad because she wakes him up. It's just, yeah, the whole interactions.
So when she goes back, and she has a dream that she has every year around the same time because this is the anniversary of her parents' death. So she has the same dream where she sees a stag in the forest. It comes closer, and there's like a ravine that's kind of in the way, but Celaena does like not. She doesn't cross the ravine. She stays on her side, and the stag kind of turns away and disappears, and she wakes up. And it's always the same dream, and she kind of just remembers the day, and she leaves the castle, like, before the sun comes up. And Chaol, like, she doesn't show up for her normal run with Chaol, and he starts to, like, get worried about her, so he goes to check in her room, and Nehemia is there, and there was, like, a note, and Nehemia basically just tells him, like, she's not gonna be here at all today. Like, today is the anniversary of her parents' death. She will not be back. Like, she does not want to be in this castle or anywhere near here for the day, like, the anniversary of the day that her parents were killed. And it kind of messes with, like, Chaol's definitely, like, a little bit hurt that she didn't tell him, but she also, and, like, he also felt, like, a little bit hurt that, like, Nehemia knew why, and he didn't. So he basically sticks around and kind of waits for her to come back.
Yeah, he also talks a bit more to Nehemia about it, and he, like you said, he's kind of, like, taken back, like, she told her, and Nehemia's like, no, she didn't tell me, but I just know. It out. Like, yeah, I just know.
Because she knows a lot about, like, what happened during that time, and, like, here's things, and...
Yeah, he also remembers how Cain was taunting her in that circle, and then recognized that, like, oh, Nehemia did something at that point, too, that really protected her. So she also was there listening to Cain say these, like, awful things.
Yeah.
This scene also gives you a flashback. The same day, the year prior, was the day that she snapped at Endovier and killed a bunch of people. Guards, not people. I mean, they are people, but...
They're guards. They're not people.
We don't care. We don't care about them. It's not the innocent people that were slaves there.
Yeah, I liked that they gave that flashback because it is like a little bit more of a, it's like so much more insight into like why she snapped.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it was on the anniversary of her parents' death and she was just like, she is pent up with rage. It also talks about that she like goes into this like killing like fog,
Mm-hmm.
which is like another hint at like this fey rage that they have.
She just like
Which is like
can't.
it's a very common theme in like all like most like fantasy books, like fantasy romance books that have to do with fae, is like that there is a like a
There's a level at
you're
which
you're
their
almost
magic
like,
shows up.
you don't black out, but you like you go like emotionless, like you are in a zone that like you can't come out of until you just come out like naturally. And they hint at that is something that happened to her. That's part of what happened to her when she was in Indovir, is that she just kind of went blank and just like killed all of these guards trying to get out.
Or they say she was trying to get out. For her, she just was done. She like snapped, and she knew she thought she was gonna die. Like,
I think
she went just into that.
She had that goal to reach the wall.
Yeah.
But yeah, Chaol like sticks around and waits for her, and they end up having like a whole conversation about, you know, he would have been here for her if he had known. And they talk about like, you know, she says I didn't want company. And they have a conversation about like want and need. And he talks about her like, well, your obsession with chocolate cake is is a need, not a want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she looks over the table and is so like, cute. Is that chocolate cake? He goes, I thought you might need some. Need or want? A ghost of a smile. For you, I'd say that chocolate cake is most definitely a need. Which is just so cute. Because before, they were having a conversation and she mentioned that she went through a lot of stuff and that she deserves to eat what she wants. And that's when he like kind of snapped back in this like mindset of like, oh, she was in Indovir. Like, she went through a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And then he's like, he gets up and she's like, where are you going? He's like, to get you chocolate cake. And it's that same chocolate cake she stumbles into Dorian while he's looking for Nehemia. So like, it just plays this like cute little role in their relationship.
And it's also one of the next times that they do have like a very sweet like embrace. Like he does genuinely comfort her, and she lets herself be comforted in the scene, which I think is like, everything's building up. Like, their relationship is now starting to grow and they're starting to become more like affectionate, more than just friends. And he is really trying to be there for her, which I think is really sweet.
Yeah.
The next chapter is all of the family tree lore drop that Dorian gets. Mm-hmm. So because he can't find Nehemia anywhere, he's like, all right, well, screw this. I'm going to go find books. I'm going to go back to the library and I'm going to look up what I can. So to summarize the best that I can, the lore that you get in this is when we learn about King Brannon and the Fae. So up until this point, really all we know is there's Gavin Havilard and there's Elena, who we now learn
is from
Terrasen. And she was
We know she has magic of some form from her visits with Celaena at this point.
Yeah. I was getting to that they went to war, and Gavin emerged from that war with his bride, the Princess Elena, the half-fae daughter of Brannon, the first king of Terrasen. So this is where you learn that Elena is half-fae, that there is a full Fae king named Brannon, who was the first Fae king of Terrasen, and that this is how the Fae line ends up in the Havalier line that Dorian is from. So, Terrasen princess marries Gavin. To anyone who may be concerned that Celaena and Dorian are related, technically they are, but it's like 1,000 years. Like, this is 1,000 years ago, so like it's fine.
I put in my updated notes next to Gavin was the mortal prince. His bride, Elena, was the half-fae daughter of Brannon. Dorian is the bloodline of Gavin. Celaena is the bloodline of Elena. And that means they're related.
Yeah, and then I just put in parentheses 1,000 years ago. It's fine. Everything is fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's all good. But, so, this, once again, freaks Dorian out. Because he knows that Brannon's line was Fae and was blessed with magic.
Mm-hmm.
So, up until this point, he just thinks that he's from Gavin's line, who is the Havalier line. But now knowing that his 1,000 years ago grandmother is a Fae princess from Brannon's line of magic wielders, he's like, well, shit. It's real. I probably have magic, and also my father's going to kill me. Like,
yes.
Actually might die. So he doesn't know how Nehemia knew, which freaks him out a little bit because he doesn't know if, like, anyone else knows. And he's just kind of... He gets more information, but it does not help his panic.
No. Kind of makes him panic more.
Yeah. Especially since he still can't find Nehemia.
Yeah.
In this moment, he doesn't trust to go to Chaol, which I can understand considering Chaol's stupid opinions on all of this shit up until now.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't... I don't really know why he doesn't think to ask Celaena, but he doesn't. So instead he goes to the one person who he knows can tell futures and stuff.
I think he still doesn't fully trust her. Because
probably
she works directly for his father. And if his father found out, like, that could be something she could use as a tool or, like, a thing against him. I don't, like, based on her character and based on their interaction, it doesn't feel like a justified thought of his, but it feels like it might be that he had this, like, underlying fear that if she knew, it would be her way out. Like, she would have something good enough to, like...
Maybe. Yeah.
Use to get her freedom. Granted, I don't think she would do it based off what we know, but she doesn't share that information with Dorian. Dorian doesn't know at this point that...
I think he also just ends up going to Baba Yellowlegs because he's convinced that she will have actual answers versus, like, Celaena and Chaol won't necessarily have answers. They'll just have, like, okay, well, what do we do about it?
Mm-hmm.
So...
Let's fix it.
He decides
down.
to go... just conceal, don't feel. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
He decides to go to Baba Yellowlegs. Before he even gets to Baba Yellowlegs, we have a whole scene that's their dinner. The birthday dinner.
Mm-hmm.
That she plans. She plans this, like, super nice, very cute, romantic birthday dinner for Chaol and is, like, super stressed out about it. She does also make a very funny comment in the beginning where she basically, like, sees him and is like, happy birthday, because she doesn't want to hear him bitch about the clothes that she's wearing.
Mm-hmm.
So she just, like, immediately starts talking before he can get, like, a word in. She arranges, like, this really nice dinner she, like, hires, like, a really, really fancy cook, like, spends a lot of money on it,
Mm-hmm.
and has the cook him, like, the meals that she has noticed that he really enjoys. And he's, like, completely, like, blindsided because, like, no one has ever done anything this nice for him before or has, like, cared enough to pay attention to what he likes to be able to give him something like this. And it's just, like, I think it's the sweetest thing that we've seen Celaena do. Like, she puts in so much effort for this and, like, really shows how much she cares about him. And it's, like, the last, like, it's, like, the last straw for their friendship.
Yeah.
Like, that thing is dead. This is not a friendship anymore. We are...
He is full love interest now.
Yes. This dinner is where she's like, okay, well, I have to tell you something now. Made you this really nice dinner. Definitely not softening you up for anything that I now have to tell you before we go any further in this relationship. She's like, so I haven't killed anyone. Didn't kill any of those people that the king asked me to kill. And Chaol freaks out. He's like, excuse me? I'm sorry. That can't be correct. Have you lost your senses completely? His words rose into a shout, a riot of rage and fear that rushed through him so fast he could hardly think. He'll kill you. He will kill you if he finds out. So this turns into a bit of a fight. But she's like, she now trusts him enough to let him in on the fact that she hasn't been killing anyone and basically just does the same thing that she did to Nehemia and, like, here's the deal. Here's everything that's been happening up until now. No one's dead. They're all alive. Also, I'm working with Archer to try to find information so that Archer can live and I can also get information on the rebels to give to the king. Sorry. It's gonna be fine.
It's gonna be so fine.
And this is also when he realizes, like, they're talking about, like, well, what are you gonna do when he finds out? Or, like, if Archer, like, gets away, like, what's going to happen? She's like, I'm gonna leave. I'm going to go somewhere. He's like, well, where are you going to go? Or how far? Like, when you finally get out, what's the plan? And she's like, I'm not gonna stick around here. And he realizes, like, oh shit, nah, she's right. Why would she stick around here? There's no reason for her to. And he does come to this realization that, oh, maybe this relationship isn't going to work out super great either. Because if I plan to stick around, she's not going to.
She's like, I'm gonna live my life, I suppose. Live it the way I want to for once. Learn how to be a normal girl. That's, like, the sentiment she brings to him.
Yeah.
And that's when he's like, how far away? Like, where are you going? And, like...
And she doesn't want him... He's like, I'll go with you. And she's like, I don't want you to give that up. And he's
what
like,
about being captain?
Yeah. Like, this is your whole thing. You love your country, she said. I can't let you give all that up. He caught the glimmer of pain and hope in her eyes, and before he knew what he was doing, he'd closed the distance between them, one hand on her wrist and the other on her shoulder. I would be the greatest fool in the world to let you go alone. And then she starts crying, and then he kisses her.
Well, first he goes, why are you crying? Because
I always think
you remind me how the world ought to be what the world can be.
That's cute.
So cute. And
I always find it weird when guys
do it.
Yeah, I always find it weird when guys kiss girls for the first time when they're crying. I don't know. I get the moment situation of, like, I know
it's not like depressed tears.
No, yeah, they're like, well, they're sad tears.
Well, she's happy because he's reminding her that, like, there are good people still.
They're heartwarming tears.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that's when they do it.
Hmm?
And that's all you're going to get out of that, because that's all we get out of that. Thanks. Fade to black. We love it. Best thing on the planet here. They also
you get
decide...
the morning after, which is cute.
They get the morning after, but then part of the morning after is like, let's not tell Dorian. Let's just let him find out naturally. I'm like, are you kidding me?
This is also... they throw in the, like...
Maybe it'll be better if we don't tell him. Why? When has that ever been a better plan?
This is also when you find out this is her first time.
Yeah.
Which is like
very... Well, she says that. She says that like as it's building up too. Because she says she wanted to wait with Sam and then he was dead. And she's like, I'm not doing that again.
Mm-hmm. And he's like, how are you feeling? Tired, but
he's
happy.
Very compassionate.
You alright though? Like, you're fine?
Yeah.
He's like, I'm pretty certain tired but happy is a normal reaction after one's first time. Where you're just like, okay. Okay, Celaena, he was being cute and you're just gonna sass him? Okay.
She doesn't have any other way of being.
It's true. It's so good though. They, of course, have the, like, how long have you wanted me? How long have you wanted me conversation. You're like,
and they don't tell each other.
Mm-hmm. Well...
they're like, well, I'm not telling you.
He says the Yule Miss Ball, maybe earlier. Maybe even Sam Hewen. Your turn. I'm not telling you, she said. Because she had no idea. She was still figuring out when it had happened. Exactly. It somehow felt as if it had always been Chaol. Even from the very beginning, even before they'd ever met. He began to protest. And that's enough talking. I might be tired, but there are still plenty of things to do instead of going for a run.
And we get another fade to black. Great. We love this here.
This is one of the things that makes me think that they are fated mates.
Ah, yes. You have a theory.
I have a fated mates theory, which
you have a fated mates theory.
But as we have learned, mates are a big thing that exists in the Fae world. At this point, we don't know she's Fae. But once I found out she was Fae, I went, excuse me, there are a lot of comments that she makes about it being the moment that they met at Enzovir. That maybe it was even before that, which... spoilers for ACOTAR. Right now, if you have not read ACOTAR, or anything ACOTAR related, plug your ears, because there's going to be spoilers for ACOTAR.
La 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 la.
Rhysand is the fated mate of Farah, and he knew before. Like, they had visions of each other through dreams. They saw each other, like, through each other's eyes for years before, and then they met, and he got this feeling. But in his world, his magic is full and, like, still doing its thing. So it's not this, like, overt feeling. It's very, like, in your face, I know for a fact this is my mate. Like, in the scene, he's, like, bowing to say, like, goodbye to her. And he looks up and just gets this, like, overwhelming, like, punch in the face. Since her magic is, like, very dialed back, because magic has been, like, killed from the world. Like, we learn that when she goes into a different portal, she becomes, like, full Fae.
Yeah.
That, like, because she doesn't have all her magic, maybe she doesn't have that same, like, punch in the face about fated mate. And I know, because I have had not spoilers, but, like, people don't like Chaol. And usually people like the fated mate. Well, maybe not. People don't like Lucian. But
that's true.
That is my theory, and it's all because of ACOTAR that I have this, like, theory in my brain.
Gotcha. I'm not telling you shit. So now that they're together, we now flip back to him actually going to Baba Yellowlegs. Mm-hmm. He goes, because Nehemia is still nowhere to be found. So Dorian goes back to talk to Baba Yellowlegs and try to get some answers. So he, like, pays her for, like, information. He asks her about, like, if she's truly a witch. And she tells him that she's the last-born witch of the Witch Kingdom, which would make her over 500 years old.
Mm-hmm.
She says, "It's a marvel I stayed so young, isn't it?" She's, like, described as, like, this very much, like, old
Haggard.
hag type.
Yeah.
Like, literally has iron teeth. Like, she's not cute. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Sassy old lady. Love it. And he says, "So it's true. Witches really are blessed with the long lifespans of the Fae." She tossed another bone at the foot of the wooden steps because she's eating chicken. She's cracking into these chicken wings like a crazy person. She says, "Fae or Volg, we never learned which one." Volg. He knew that name. The demons who stole Fae to breed with them, which made them witches, right? And if he recalled correctly, the beautiful Kraken witches had taken after their Fae ancestors, while the 3 clans of Iron Teeth witches took after the race of demons that had invaded Aurelia at the dawn of time. So she asks him, like, "Why do you care about these stories? Like, what are you asking?" And he's like, well, like, what, hypothetically, like, if magic were still a thing, you know, where would that have come from?" And she's like, "What are you talking about? Magic's gone." And he's like, "Right, again, hypothetically, though, like, if it were back, how would that have happened? Like, if someone had powers." She's like, "What powers?" She's like,
"What you talking about, boy?"
"Powers that lordlings have no business knowing. Now ask your next question." He's, like, the worst at asking these questions and not making it super obvious.
Yeah.
Just as I said hypothetically, jokingly, he says it literally. Like, hypothetically.
He goes, hypothetically, if someone had magic and wanted to learn why, I'd start by figuring out why magic left in the first place.
Yeah, like, responding to him.
Mm-hmm.
Asking hypothetically. So she basically, he's asking all these questions, and her only info that he gives him is to go back to figure out how it left.
And then she goes, "Strange questions from a lordling dwelling in the glass castle. Strange, strange questions." So he's pretty much given her fuel.
Way too much information.
Yeah. She now knows way too much. Stranger still that the last-born witch of the Witch Kingdom would stoop low enough to spend her life doing carnival tricks. So he, of course, sasses right back, which is like, all right, maybe we don't do that with someone who is over 500 years old and
not great.
Evolved. And, like, you know, potentially very evil and bad. But okay, sure, Dorian, you're making great decisions.
He also kind of gets caught by his cousin Roland. Mm-hmm. Roland sees him leaving the tent and is like, walks up to him and is like, "Did you get your fortune read?" And Dorian's like, "Ah, what are you doing here? Why were you following me? Like, what's going on?" And kind of, like, plays it off, but he's now, like, suspicious of either Roland is, like, spying on him and following him around, or, like, this is just some coincidence. But he's, like, been very suspicious of him since he saw the ring on his finger that both the king and Duke Parrington have. So, not great. After that, Celaena is, like, kind of back on the hunt for the list that Archer had given her originally, and, like, goes to find some of these people, and she finds them, like, all leaving and, like, being hurried out of the city. So she's pissed and goes and tracks down Archer and is like, "Hey, what the fuck, dog? Like, why are all of these people on the list that you gave me now hightailing it out of town? Like, did you tell them?" And he's like, no, like, I didn't like tell them. I just kind of, like, hinted that maybe their lives might be in danger or something. And she's like, okay, well, I kind of was gonna save you in exchange for information, but if you make all the information that you give me leave, so like our deal's not gonna be on anymore, so I might just kill you now, huh? He's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, don't do that. Everything's fine. We'll figure it out. We'll find something else. It'll be great. And like the only thing that comes out of this conversation, other than like her being really pissed, is she's actually impressed and like has faith in the like rebels, because they actually were able to mobilize and get their people out. Like they care. They're not just like treating the people that are out there risking their lives for them like cannon fodder and like, well, you know, if something happens to them, whatever.
Yeah.
Like she's surprised that the rebels are out there like actually doing good, and they're not just like Davis, like the guy that she originally found the word key book in. Like he was shitty, like he was not a good person, and now she's seeing that like they're not, the rebels that he's worked with are like not all like that. Like they're genuinely trying to do good and protect their people.
Yeah. So she notices that he is helping these people. So he's like, she's frustrated, but also is like, there's still that point of her that is thinking that he's good.
He told them for the right reasons, which I think
Mm-hmm.
she's like, obviously she doesn't literally kill him right there, so there's
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah.
But she's still got like a quota that she has to meet with the king. Like, if I'm gonna continue to let you live and pretend that you're super hard to kill, which people are starting to question why you're this
Mm-hmm.
difficult to kill and how you're not dead yet.
Yep.
If I can't give them something else in return, like I'm not gonna have a choice. I'm going to have to come for you. But yeah, so she's starting to get, I think, more conflicted about the job that she's having to do. Like it is
Mm-hmm.
getting more and more difficult now for her to be his assassin, especially now that she knows these rebels both personally through Archer and through seeing what they can actually mobilize and what they can actually do to
Mm-hmm.
fight against the king. So it's getting more difficult for her to just like
Ignore it.
thwart them. I can't remember why the fight with Nehemia starts. She
She lets
freaks
her
out.
in about them like sleeping together because she like looked at a
We're having girl talk.
room closet. Yeah. So they're in like girl talk. So she's talking about how she slept with Chaol. She's letting Nehemia in on like this other part of her life. She goes, I'm happy for you, my friend. And Celaena smiled back, I think I'm happy for me too. And for the first time in years, she thinks that she's truly happy. So they're having this like really nice moment. And then Nehemia kind of stares off and is like, I'm happy for my friend, but also like, there's all this shit happening. And she's just in La La Land with a boy. And like, she needs to get her head in the game because Nehemia knows a lot more than she leads on, as we've been kind of talking about. She doesn't, she hints at it over time and she's trying to push people in the right direction. And she's playing this like master plan, but she really doesn't say anything until like now. She like kind of is like, Celaena, get your shit together. And like
Because
really.
the king has asked her to talk to the rebels and
Mm-hmm.
basically tell them to like stop rebelling.
Stop. Yeah.
And her people have been butchered.
Mm-hmm.
He killed 500 of them just on the way to a slave camp. He wants to make the slave camps bigger so that he can put more of her people in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then he asks her to also just tell them that, yeah, no, that's fine. Let us keep doing that. Don't rebel. And she's genuinely afraid. She is on her own. She's like not getting any help from her dad because her dad's got their own shit that they're dealing with. And Celaena's like, well, like, why can't any of your family help? with that if you're not getting the support. And she's like, that's what I am here for. That is the reason that I was sent here, to do something about this. And this is like, this whole conversation is when I think Nehemia like really almost slips up and just like tells her everything. Because she is terrified that this is like her last chance. Yeah, she's absolutely at her breaking point. She tries to convince Celaena to help her free Eelway. And Selena's like, what are you talking about? Like, free Eelway? Like, that's an insane task. Like, that's not just like, oh, like, free some rebels or like help the rebels do whatever they're doing here. Like, that's like the same shit that like Alina and Mort are like pushing her to do as well. It's like, go save the world. Do all of it. We're going to put it all on your shoulders. And at least in this instance, Nehemia is like, we can do it together. Like, we'll put our forces together. Like, we can join forces and do this. And Celaena's like, I don't have any forces. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I think this does lend to, like, that theory that, like, Nehemia knows so much more and just doesn't tell Celaena how much she knows. She, like, holds back so much because I think she wants Celaena to tell her herself when she's ready. And she's... I mean, Celaena, like, argues with her. You have no idea what sort of things he can do to you, Nehemia, to your people. She says, he massacred 500 rebels and their families. He has destroyed my entire kingdom. You daydream about power and honor of Terrason's royal court, yet you don't realize what it means that the king was able to destroy them. They were the strongest court on the continent. They were the strongest court on any continent, and he killed them all. Like, they're both so scared, but Celaena is like, she's given up.
I saw what he did.
She's like, yeah, no, but Nehemia is freaked out because it's like, yes, and you're going to let it happen again.
Yeah.
You are in a position where you could help do something about that and not let that happen to an entire kingdom. And she can't convince Celaena to do something. She's like, no, the way to do it instead is to just not make any noise, and then he won't destroy your kingdom. And Nehemia is like, your kingdom was destroyed before there was war. Like, there was no war beforehand, and he just decided to kill them all. Like, that doesn't work. So, like, they argue back and forth, like, I'm one person. And Nehemia is like, you were chosen by Queen Elena, the one person whose brow burnt with a sacred mark on the day of the duel. One person who, despite the odds, is still breathing. Our paths crossed for a reason. If you're not God's blessed, then who is? I mean, this fight, it makes me so sad. And she calls her a coward again.
Yeah.
So, this makes me just so upset, because just like I said at the beginning, when Mort calls her a coward, I feel so bad for her. I understand why everyone is pushing her in the direction that they need her to go, because, like, she does feel like the last hope. And when you find out that she's Aelin at the end of the book, like, you know she's actually the last hope. She is the only person that anyone can think of or has identified as being able to actually muster the amount of the, like, force actually needed to defeat
Go against the king, yeah.
And she's like, yep, well, my entire court was destroyed, so not really a battle I want to fight.
I'm one person. I don't have anyone to back me.
She doesn't know. She was, like, so young when it happened, too, that, like, where would she even start to, like, build her court? Like, she'd have to just go and, like, go to the rebels and be like, cool, great, thanks, guys. Don't know who any of you are. Don't trust any of you. Yeah. Why would they trust her, also?
Yeah.
And they... they just, like, they get into this huge fight, and they, like, storm away from each other.
Yeah.
And
this is the one time that we get a glimpse that Nehemia goes down into the dungeons or the caverns by herself. She goes to the sarcophagi and talks to Celaena. And so this is the
I
first
love that it's
time,
not explicitly stated either that it's her. They only ever mention it as the queen said to the princess, and the queen or the princess are, like, referenced.
Mm-hmm.
And they never say each other's names. But she says, one of them has to break, the queen said to the princess. Only then can it begin. I know, the princess said softly, but the prince isn't ready. It has to be her. Then you understand what I'm asking of you. The princess looked up toward the shaft of moonlight spilling into the tomb. When she looked back at the ancient queen, her eyes were bright. Yes. Then do what needs to be done. The princess nodded and walked out of the tomb. She paused on the threshold, the darkness beyond beckoning to her, and turned back to the queen. She won't understand, and when she goes over the edge, there will be nothing to pull her back. She will find her way back. She always does. Tears formed, but the princess blinked them away. For all our sakes, I hope you're right.
This is like your setup to the end of part 1. Is that.
We
so
almost
you're not
get
given
2 final 100 pages in this book. Because we get, like, a final 100 pages of part 1, thanks Sarah, and then a final 100 pages of part 2, also thanks Sarah.
Yeah. So
just twice the trauma. It's great.
Yeah. You get this idea. You know that it's Nehemia. You know that's Celaena that are talking to each other. And it's
like,
at this point you're like, what's gonna happen? What is she not gonna understand? And then it just pauses there and we go into Chaol's hunting with the king. And you're like, the fuck does this mean? And why are we going back to Chaol on his stupid fancy horse with the king in this hunting
nice
party?
New horse.
There is one line that I did enjoy from the king in this one. And he pretty much, like, notices that Chaol's, like, distracted. And he's like, you're distracted today. And Chaol kind of, like, jumps and notices that the king has, like, kind of sauntered up next to him and his horse. And he pretty much says, whatever will my lords do without you to kill their quarry for them? Which I giggled because
my God,
he's just like,
King make
clearly
joke.
My lords and they just suck at hunting, and so pretty
useless.
much Chaol has this thought of, like, he can't do it this year because there's too many of them and it'll be too, like, known that Chaol's killing them, and then being like, oh look, Lord so-and-so, you killed the thing that you're hunting, here you go. Like, but Chaol's doing it the whole time, so it's just,
his lords are so useless they can't kill their own prey when they're out on a hunt. Yeah, it's great.
And the king knows it.
Yes.
But this was the only moment where the king said something where I was like, oh my God, he's kind of normal, maybe?
Did he just make a joke?
Yeah, like, I hate him, but I like this. This was funny. Like, that was funny. And then, like, he's like, oh, apologies. Like, my bad.
Sorry, I forgot. I'm the bad guy. Bye.
Yeah. And then he, like, of course, is like,
and then, like, immediately
do
after, he's
things.
like, also, we're gonna interrogate the princess later. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. But it's just like, you start off and you're like, wait, do I kind of like the king? Like, maybe the king isn't actually bad? Oh, no. Wait.
Oh, no.
He is.
Immediately.
Just kidding.
Yes. No. Can't think that for more than
a millisecond.
10 sentences.
Yeah.
Yeah, because literally within the next paragraph, he's like, also, I'm having the Princess of Ewell questioned in my council room tomorrow night.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, Chaol doesn't do shit.
Yes.
Doesn't do anything. Doesn't tell or warn anyone. So that's great.
Yep.
He ends up having some, like, he like thinks more about the king and his like conversation later, and like ends up having this like comment to himself about, wouldn't it really stick it to dad if I took Otterland's assassin as my wife? And I'm like, okay, great, Chaol.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
He
Stick
also
it to
has
your
this
dad.
comment. He has a comment that like really shows that he's like choosing Celaena over him or over the king. He said, Chaol reached the dark, silent garden and strode between the hedges. He'd kill any man who hurt Celaena, and if the king ever gave him the order to dispatch her, then he'd plunge his sword into his own heart before he would obey. And this is part of that like idea of he's like, oh shit, I just had this actual thought.
Yeah.
Maybe I want her to be my wife. And you're like, huh? What? What do you mean? Okay, cool. Gods above, he muttered, shaking his head. That day was a long way off. Like, what am I even... He even calls himself out. Like, who? What is happening? Why am I thinking this
What just
way?
happened?
What? Where am I? What?
Stop that, brain. That really
we just
got off
slept
track
together
fast.
for the first time. Like, what am I doing now?
Literally,
Moral
the
of the
next
story,
day,
he doesn't do anything. He doesn't do shit.
Yeah.
Doesn't tell anyone anything.
the thing that's frustrating is like he says that he basically is like, oh yeah, I'd do anything to protect her, but he like doesn't. It's just her,
Mm-hmm.
and it's only like protect her. It's not like do what he needs to for her to be happy, which I think is the difference for me, because like it is him and it is her, and anyone that exists outside those two people, even if that person matters a lot to her, doesn't fall under that umbrella, which doesn't make sense. Because, like, he knows that it will hurt her greatly if anything happens to Nehemia, or if she finds out that, like, he's been keeping things from her about Nehemia specifically.
Yeah.
Like, he knows that it will hurt her a lot. So,
yeah, and
like,
he has that like inner dialogue the whole time.
It just doesn't.
Where he's
that
like,
part
she's gonna be so mad when she finds out, and you're like, then maybe we tell her. Maybe
we should tell her.
We communicate. Our favorite trope is communication. We love it. So
it's
good.
fine, because then he gets like
He
gets just like a little bit captured. It's fine. He gets kidnapped.
Just a little kidnapped.
Just a little kidnapped.
Just a little like beating.
He never he gets kidnapped, and like Celaena kind of gets stressed out. She has flashbacks from everything that happened with Sam.
Yes.
And she's like, I'll just go check on him, and goes to like his room, and he's not in his room. She's like, okay,
there's a note.
This isn't good. She finds a note that literally is like, we've taken him, come alone or we'll kill him. And she goes back into just like the killing rage. And she
goes, oh, bet?
no problem. I will be there. Toot sweet. I will be right there.
Don't you worry. They, of course, also panic because she doesn't find the note until, like, way later in the day.
Yeah, and then it says, we'll kill him by morning.
Yeah. Because they took him in the morning.
How could you guarantee that you could make sure she got the note on time? But, all right. So he's like, he wakes up after being kidnapped and is like, oh, shit, like, what's happening? Like, these guys are idiots. Like, the king's not gonna... like come for me. Like, you can't ransom me to the king. And he's like listening to them speak, and they're like, he's like pretends to be asleep.
She's not here yet.
She's not here yet. She'll be here. And he's like, if you hurt her, I will. What is it? You hurt her, and I will rip you apart with my bare hands. You so much as touch her, and I'll gut you. And the guard says, good luck with that. You'd better pray to whatever gods you favor that your little assassin cooperates. What do you want from her? None of your business, Captain, and keep your mouth shut when she arrives, or I'll cut out your filthy royal tongue. He says later,
how about a damn fool, Chaol said. I don't think you realize who you're dealing with. The man clicked his tongue. If you were that good, you would be more than the captain of the guard. Chaol let out a low, breathy laugh. I wasn't talking about me. She's just one girl. Though his guts were twisting at the thought of her in this place with these people, though he was considering every possible way to get himself and Celaena out of here alive, he gave the man a grin. Then you're really in for a surprise. And you're just like, yes, 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 yes,
Okay,
yes, yes.
so we are now at the part where we're like, we haven't really seen her fight yet. Like, we've heard about the crazy shit she did in Endovir. We've heard about, like, crazy shit that she's done as Erebin's assassin. And this is it. The killing rage is on. She is going to go, like, save Chaol. She's fucking pissed. And she, like, gets to the compound or whatever. She, like, scouts it out. She finds, like, a window on the fucking, like, top floor that she can see all the way down into the building. And she's like, okay, great. See some guards over there. See some dudes over there. Pretty sure if I just land on that thing, I can kill these guys and kill those guys. And then I'll land on that platform. And then I'll roll off that platform and I'll do this other thing. She's like, all right, great. Go. And,
like, there are archers.
Jumps,
gotta run and jump in a fucking window.
Jumps through the window. Throws her daggers while she jumps through the window so that she kills 2 or 3 people as she goes down. Lands on the platform, does like crazy kung fu shit, and kills
Stops
a bunch of other
with,
people.
Like, the pole that's in front of her, like the railing.
And is just absolutely obliterating them.
Yeah.
Like,
just
no holds barred,
bop, bop.
just absolutely crushing it. And Chaol's like, what the fuck am I watching? Like, again, we're assuming that there's some sort of fae abilities that she just inherently is tapping into, that she's just a total badass, okay? Like, she's just great. And then a hooded man had gotten far enough away from her to start shouting, enough, like, please stop. He tells the archers, like, not to shoot at her, and just, like, tries to defuse the whole situation. It turns out that the rebels had captured her. Captured him. The rebels, aided by Archer, and she's like, someone fucking tell me what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Or I'm just gonna keep killing everyone. And he's like, Archer's trying to get her to, like, listen to him, and she's like, unchain him and let him go right now. Archer's like, after we talk, and she goes, nope. No, that's not how this works. Unchain him right now, or I will just start killing people again. Like, I can keep doing that.
My favorite in this scene is, like, the guard that sassed Chaol.
Yeah.
Like, looks like he wants to fight, and she's like,
do it.
Come on.
Let's go. Nothing would make me happier than beating the shit out of you. I'm still angry.
I still want to, like, beat up people, and this guy wants it, so, like, come get it.
So we, as the reader, at an all-time high, okay? Our badass girl just kicked ass through this whole thing and, like, just absolutely crushed it and is here to save the day. So, of course, everything has to come crashing down now, okay? Because that's just how Sarah writes her books. So, Archer has orchestrated all of this to specifically bring Chaol here, because he was not convinced that when he tells her what has been going on at the castle, that he was going to believe him without Chaol being here to confirm it or deny it. And Archer tells her that they found out that Nehemia's life had been threatened, and that Chaol knew about it and didn't tell anybody. And not just that, like, her life has been threatened, but specifically that it's been threatened by, like, the king and people within the court specifically.
Yeah.
And she is, like, she's furious and so torn and is, like, trying to figure out what's going on. And Archer basically tells her, well, actually, it's happening right now. That we dispatched people to the palace to try to stop it, but we're pretty sure our people aren't going to make it, and Nehemia is going to die. And she, like, looks at Chaol and Chaol just basically like confirms everything that he did know, and that
But he didn't know this was going to happen.
But he didn't know that this part was going to happen.
Yeah.
And she, like, doesn't believe him and just immediately leaves and just starts running and runs all the way back to the castle. Is another situation where, like, Chaol, like, she, like, exhibits this, like, fae strength, like, otherworldly strength and speed, runs all the way back to the castle, beats Chaol back, even though Chaol found a horse and rode the horse to the castle.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets back to the castle and makes it all the way up to Nehemia's room, and she's already dead.
Yep.
And it's, like, it's really gruesome and brutal. I like, lost it when I read this the first time.
She, like, burst through the door. Nehemia's dead. There's blood everywhere. And that's the end of part 1.
God damn it, Sarah.
I got to this point right before bed. It's great.
You did not.
Yep.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
That's rough.
Yeah.
That might be...
And it was, like,
that's,
almost
like,
1 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, I gotta work in the morning, so I guess I have to end here. I was like, she died. And I was just like, what the fuck? How is that possible? Yeah.
Ouch.
So. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, yeah. So that's part 1. We didn't plan for this to be a 2-part episode, but
here we are.
We've been recording for a while, so we're expecting that this episode's going to be pretty chonky. So we're going to end there and record a second episode, and then we will post that.
Yeah, we'll post them back to back. We'll just do them a week
back-to-back,
week after each other instead of the.
So you'll get a bonus episode.
Yeah, you'll get an extra episode, an extra week of content.
Yeah.
But yeah, we want to thank you again for checking out our podcast and checking out, I guess, part 1 of Crown of Midnight. We hope you enjoy your time here. You can find us at the Smut Peddlers on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok for additional content. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.